Many know about slavery, but few discuss paper genocide. We did not all come from Africa, and most of us have Aboriginal roots that were stripped away due to reclassification and miseducation. As a native Black American and a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation, I understand the importance of tracing your lineage. If you want to learn how to trace your genealogy and apply for tribal citizenship, go to nativeblackancestry.com to schedule a consultation.
They don't want you to remember this. You not no slave, you indigenous. Fuck how they painted them Indians. You went to war with the French and the British men. Quite frankly, you was kings, Merovingians. They took the women and men, made them prisoners, raised up the children to worship their images, set up a lab to the genes and they mixed them, and this shit get way deeper than your pigment.
All right. Shout out to everybody tuning in on TikTok. Shout out to everybody tuning in on YouTube. If you're watching on TikTok, make sure to check out the website, nativeblackancestry.com, as well as the YouTube channel, Native Black Ancestry. We've got a lot of great content. The website is a treasure trove of information just waiting for you to discover. Matter of fact, hold on real quick. Let me show you exactly what I'm talking about. You see, if you go to my website, nativeblackancestry.com, a good first step for you would be to start with the tribal surname tab. You can actually see if any of your family surnames align with any of the adopted surnames of the 5 civilized tribes. You know, it's a total misnomer that we get our last names from slave masters, because when we do the genealogy, we find that not all of our ancestors were enslaved to begin with. So where does our last name come from? Well, hey, you may have some European admixture. You may have some ancestors who were converted by the Moravians or the Pilgrims or the Protestants or the Catholics or the various other Christian denominations that came over here conquering and converting our ancestors. But, you know, the tribal surname tab is a good first step. If you become a member of the website, you can actually access a book list with all of my primary sources. You can read some of these books straight through my website. No need to even purchase them on Amazon. A lot of my primary sources. Great wealth of knowledge right here in this book list. And I've personally curated a digital archive with over 600 documents, family photos, newspaper clippings, Black Indian obituaries, Indian slave ads, ex-Indian slave interviews. The list goes on and on and on. And you can download this stuff to your phone, to your computer, share it on social media. It's all about spreading the word. Another thing when it comes to the website is if you need more personalized guidance with genealogy, you can actually go to my website, access my calendar, pick a day and time that works for you, and connect with me one-on-one, where I will consult with you for over an hour and teach you the 3-step process that me and my family used to trace our heritage and get tribal citizenship with the Muskogee Creek Nation back in 2021. I already see a lot of folks piling up in the TikTok chat as well as YouTube. If anybody wants to call in, this is a live call-in show as of late. We've been doing these call-in shows with the following prompt. Let me see if I can pull it up here. You guys can already see it on TikTok, but for the folks on YouTube, here it is. Latinos and Africans have the biggest identity crisis. Black Americans are indigenous to America. Prove me wrong. Call in. If you would like to debate me on the prompt, if you're a Latino that thinks that I'm crazy for alleging that you guys have an identity crisis, well, click the link, call in. Let me know how you feel. If you're watching on TikTok, you can request to join as a guest. I'll bring you right up. If you're watching on YouTube, I'm actually posting a StreamYard link in the chat right now. Just click the StreamYard link. It'll bring you right up. No need to turn on your camera or anything. We just got to have audio connected. If you're an African that disagrees with the prompts, then don't be shy. We get you Africans calling in from all over the world. You Africans are EBA everywhere but Africa. Let's talk about it, y'all. Let's talk about it. Them Africans be calling in from New Zealand, Switzerland, London, Louisiana, Alabama, Canada. I mean, it's few and far in between where I actually have an African calling in from Africa. All right. Or if you're a Pan-African, if you're one of these pan goofies that took a DNA test that said you're Nigerian and now you want to force feed that Nigerian ancestry on all of us, well, go ahead, click the link, call in, let us know what you think. And you know what? To get this party kicked off, I'm going to send some invites over on TikTok. We'll see if anybody wants to provide some commentary. If anybody has questions, I am your resident expert when it comes to American Indian history. If you have questions about genealogy, tribal citizenship, anything in between, go ahead and ask away. I see Tyrone in the audience. I know Tyrone always has something to say. Or if you guys have been tuned in to the debates that we've been engaging in over the last week, then call in and let me know what was a memorable debate you saw. I mean, what was a memorable crash out that you witnessed? Lord knows people be calling in and crashing out day in and day out on my show. Day in and day out. It's crazy, y'all. It's crazy. But while we wait to see if we have any live callers, you know what? I want to catch you guys up on something that went down last night. This was a very, very interesting interaction. Let me bring it up real quick. Let me bring it up. But maybe I'm wrong. Let's see. Mike, let us know. Where are you calling in from?
Ohio.
What was that?
Dayton, Ohio.
Dayton, Ohio. And where's your family from originally?
I'm Irish, but I do have 1% black.
Irish and 1% black. And well, the fact that you
Not
said
sure
percent,
where that come from.
yeah, the fact that you said percent makes me think that you got that info from a DNA test.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Do you have any like oral tradition of black ancestry, or did you trace like paper trail records and find black ancestors on your family tree?
I just did DNA through my I don't know who my father, I can't track that way. But yeah, they said West Africa. I have some DNA that traces back
Okay, I got you.
somewhere in West Africa. So yeah, I don't have any true tradition. I can trace on my mother's side, it's French, the priest, and Spanish, but apparently goes all the way back to England though.
Interesting. And you said Irish heritage, right?
Yeah.
And would you happen to know like the era that your Irish ancestors came over here, the means or the circumstances in which they came over, et cetera, or not so much?
Not so much. I mean, I had to look at when my mom's done some of the genealogy on me, but on us going through my mom and grandma and Blankenships and the priest.
Well,
So,
hey,
the Blankenships were
let
all
me
popular.
let me drop some gems on you before we even get started with the conversation, because as Chuck Hicks said, Abbott Emerson Smith has a book that I bought named Colonists in Bondage, and it has records from the Virginia Company of London that says only white people came here, not the Africans. So what Chuck is referring to is actually in the early days of the British 13 colonies, the first slaves, besides the indigenous ones, were the hundreds of thousands of European slaves that they brought over through like the Virginia Company of London and other corporate factions. Besides this book that he's citing as a source, I actually, during my genealogy consultations that I do with folks, I actually cite a couple more sources. This is really crazy. I mean, a lot of Europeans, such as yourself, they know, hey, my ancestors came from Ireland or Scotland or France, but they don't really know the means in which they came over. And in school, we're all fed this false narrative that most Europeans came over here as humble and meek pilgrims or folks on the Mayflower, when in actuality, most of them initially came over as slaves. And actually, here's another primary source. Give it just a second to load. This book is called They Were White and They Were Slaves, The Untold History of Enslavement of Whites in Early America. And this is another book. We've cited 3 books now. This one is called White Cargo. And in this excerpt, it clearly says, this is the forgotten story of thousands of white Britons who lived and died in bondage of Britain's American colonies. In the 17th and 18th centuries, more than 300,000 white people were shipped to America as slaves. Urchins. What's an urchin? Hold on, Mike. Allow me to finish, and then I'll bring you in. What's an urchin, guys? An urchin is like a poor homeless kid in London or Europe somewhere. It says urchins were swept up from London streets to labor in tobacco fields, where life expectancy was no more than 2 years. Brothels, aka hoe houses, were raided to provide breeders for Virginia. So the next time you guys come across a Karen who thinks that great-great-granny came through the Mayflower, no, she could have been a whore in Europe that was kidnapped and sent to the colonies to be a breeder. It says here, hopeful migrants were duped into signing as indentured servants, unaware they would become personal property who could be bought, sold, and even gambled away. Transported convicts were paraded for sale like livestock. Damn. But yeah, Mike, I think you had something you want to say. Go for it.
Yeah, I was going to say, look, I remember back in history class and stuff, and I do remember saying that the reason the dark skin became prevalent because it was easier to identify them. That originally it was white, and then they kind of transferred over to mostly dark skin because of the fact that if they ran off, you could find them easier.
I'm not checking. Are you saying that at one point in time it shifted from white slaves to darker skinned slaves, so darker skinned slaves could be tracked easier? Huh?
Yes. Yeah. It was easier to identify whenever they ran off the plantation.
Yeah, that's interesting. I haven't heard that one. In my research, Black Indigenous communities were enslaved in place mostly because of their agricultural expertise. I mean, Black Indigenous tribes in the Southeast, the richest, most fertile land in the world, they cultivated cotton, tobacco, maize, indigo long before Europeans came. So, when we talk about a vested interest in a plantation owner enslaving a local indigenous person, it's for their skills, their knowledge, their know-how.
I can see that. I'm not your knowledge of history weighs mine. I haven't done any research on that. I'm just what I've heard in my 50 years being around. I some really interesting ideals. I hear some pushback on against your theories. Do you think? I mean, because you think it takes some of the victimhood you've heard out of their argument? Is that, or why do you think you're getting pushback on some of this?
Well, before we talk about the pushback, you mentioned a theory. What theory are we talking about exactly?
Oh, no, I mean, I just what you're saying. It's very interesting. I haven't heard go into this detail as far as the indigenous were actually. Well, I mean, it does make sense because I lived in Oklahoma, and a big part of our Oklahoma history was the Trail of Tears, and it didn't seem like. I mean, they said that there was like 40,000 people brought or something like that. I try to remember what the numbers were whenever they dragged them from east and brought them to Oklahoma on the reservations.
Yeah, no, I don't remember the exact numbers off the top of my head either, but yeah, no, there was a lot of displacement of indigenous communities since the beginning of colonization. But if I understand what you're trying to say, is you're trying to say you haven't heard a lot of people speak this in detail about the racial reclassification of Black indigenous tribes across the Americas, or?
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Well, the reason why you don't hear most people speaking about this in detail is because most people aren't privy to it. I mean, the average American goes to school, gets fed a false version of history, never questions it. If they go to graduate school or college, then that's just reinforced, and you never question it because your teachers and professors have an authoritative position, right? But as soon as you start doing independent research, as soon as you start doing independent research and looking at the right places, I mean, the evidence is very well documented. I can bring up Spanish conquistador journals from the 1500s that talk about Black indigenous tribes in California and all across North America. So it's like, the proof is right in front of us.
I mean, it's interesting. I mean, I'm total agreement that race is a social construct. I mean, we're all people, and there's only one race, the human race. And so I'm wide open on any discussion as far as this goes. And I find it extremely interesting, though, from you going, because if you look, I mean, I don't think there was enough traffic from boats back then to create the number of tribes and the slaves that they were enslaved at that time. And then you had, in the addition, I mean, I've heard recently that you had I don't remember how many it was, former slaves that started taking on slaves themselves. It's just once they got free, they went and bought some slaves. So
well, I mean, that's yet another point of academic malpractice. It was never a situation where somebody got their freedom and then they turned around and bought slaves. Oftentimes what happened, especially if you're living in a different colony, such as the French colonies, before the Louisiana Purchase, all of the Midwest of Canada was called French Louisiana Territory, and they had a pathway to freedom and citizenship for slaves. You can purchase your family's freedom, et cetera, et cetera. And then when the British get that territory after the Louisiana Purchase, well, some of the people who were able to maintain their freedom, they begin to purchase family members so that on paper, you are my property, meaning some white person, some slave catcher can't capture you and send you off to their plantation. I'm actually a genealogist, and I've done genealogy research for thousands of Black Americans. And I actually had a lady a couple months ago who hired me to trace her family's heritage. And I showed her a document where her ancestor had a labor contract negotiated by the Freedmen's Bureau. So this lady says to me, "Oh, Mike, my ancestor was a freedman, so he was a slave." Well, I then showed her the Louisiana census from 1840, where her ancestor was listed as a free person of color. Not only that, he owned plantations. Not only that, he owned slaves. But wait, there's more. I found the actual purchase agreement. I found the document, handwritten, where he was buying slaves to grant them their freedom. It was called manumission at the time. He would write in the agreement, "When this transaction is concluded, so-and-so is free and has the full protection of my family." But you see how this lady would assume that her ancestor was a slave at some point because of a classification such as freedman. Furthermore, when you hear about Indians having slaves, Indians having Black slaves, that's a big misconception. These Indian slave owners were half-breeds who had Scottish Irish fathers. When you hear about Indians that signed treaties that resulted in their tribes walking the Trail of Tears, every single one of these Indians had a Scottish father and an Indian mother. I'm a member of the Muskogee Creek Nation, the half-breed Scottish sellout that sold away and made us walk the Trail of Tears. His name was William McIntosh. He had a Scottish aristocrat father. He had an indigenous Creek Indian mother, and his cousin was George Troup, the governor of Georgia. So you see how European, Scottish, and Irish are intermixing with local Native Black American communities to get land, to get labor, to get riches. It's been going on for a long time.
Yes. Because I knew I used to have a roommate who was a Creek Indian, full blood. Man, he could drink. But I whenever I was trying to remember back Oklahoma history, that McIntosh I do remember that name.
There's a county named McIntosh in Oklahoma. Yeah, they still give reverence to the Scottish sellout that sold away the tribe's land. Do you know what my tribe did to him when we found out he signed away the treaty, that he signed away the land in the treaty with Andrew Jackson? We went out to his plantation because he was a slave owner. He had a plantation. We went to his plantation, shot him with muskets 60 times, and burned his plantation to the ground. He got assassinated by our tribe. So when you see that parts of Oklahoma, so when you hear that parts of Oklahoma name counties and parks after him and stuff, you see it's because these are compromised Indians in positions of power.
Wow.
You hear about the term $5 Indians. That wasn't like a joke. That wasn't a quip. That wasn't like a myth or a conspiracy. Europeans literally paid money to get placed on the Dawes Roll and to get land in Oklahoma. Why? Because Oklahoma land is rich with oil. If they didn't pay to get on the roll, they married a native girl so that they could be listed on the Dawes Roll as an intermarried white. Or those who really had a lot of money, they can just pay to get adopted by a tribe. So they get adopted, their family comes to Oklahoma, and they bring their slaves with them. And now this is, again, perpetuating the notion of these Indians having slaves. These slave-holding Indians are half-breeds raised by their European father to live out life like an average European man.
I'm just trying. Because Andrew Jackson, whenever that happened, when was that? Was that before Civil War or after Civil War? I was trying to remember.
Which part of Andrew Jackson?
When he had the Trail of Tears and everything.
Oh yeah, Trail of Tears was 1830s. Yep.
18.
Just finished my consultation with Mike. A lot of information in a short period of time, but it was very valuable information. I'm definitely excited to get started searching on my genealogy. He's been an awesome resource. Gave me a lot of information, a lot of things, a lot of pieces to the puzzle I didn't have. He was able to help me find them, and I 100% recommend Mike and his services to anyone who's looking to crack the code, so to speak, on their genealogy. Because there's a lot of how we say fake news going around with this subject, and it's very important that people are able to put the pieces together. Because if you don't know your history, you don't know your future. So 100% sign up.
1930s. That was, my brain isn't working right now. Civil War was 1850s?
Civil War ended 1865.
60, okay. So if they were enslaving the Indians, why didn't they enslave the Muskogee Indians instead of sending them to Oklahoma?
Great question. Mike says if they were enslaving Indians, why would they not enslave some Muskogee Indians instead of sending them all to Oklahoma? Not all Indians walked the Trail of Tears. Thousands of them remained as slaves in the Southeast and are reclassified as mulatto, Negro, Black, and more recent times, African American. Now you get the full picture. Not every single Indian walked the Trail of Tears. Some of them were taken as prisoners of war. My tribe had a civil war. There was something called the Red Stick faction of the Creeks. They wanted to war against Andrew Jackson. They didn't want to leave their land. They didn't want to walk the Trail of Tears. So guess what? They go to Florida, become the Seminoles, aka the Seminoles, and they're warring against Andrew Jackson. And when these Seminoles are captured, they're taken as slaves, sold to the Caribbean. Women and children sold to local plantation owners. So yes, it's a total misnomer that all Indians walk the Trail of Tears. No, the fair-skinned, the ones that aligned with the Confederacy, the ones who were the half-breed sellouts, and some Black indigenous ones, they walked. But so many were taken, enslaved in place, and reclassified throughout the years.
I mean, I remember I heard a number. It was only like, what was it? 6,000 died in actuality on the trail. I'm like, so how many actually went? I mean, was that a high percentage?
No, there was so many Indians. There was so many Indians that resisted Indian removal. They didn't trust the government. Yeah. They didn't want to go to some reservation, so they stayed in place. And guess what happened if they stayed in place? Either they were taken as a prisoner of war, they're a slave on the plantation, or if they maintained their autonomy, they have to identify as a colored person, as a Negro, as a mulatto. They actually had laws on the books in the East Coast and the Southeast where you can't identify on government documentation as Indian unless you live on a reservation. In some cities, they would actually jail Indians, fine them, whip them, massacre them if they were identifying as indigenous. What do you mean you're Indian? We told all you motherfuckers to go west of the Mississippi to Oklahoma and Arkansas. So many indigenous tribes remain there. You even see some tribes to this day who got recognition. There's a band of the Seminoles that never left, that now own Hard Rock Casino and Cafe. There's some tribes in Alabama, some Creek tribes that never left. They're called the Eastern Band of Creeks or the Eastern Band of Cherokees, this and that. So no, there's so many that did not go. But the ones that went, those are the ones that sign up on the Dolls Roll, get the casinos popping. A lot of white folks come out there.
It worked out for them eventually, but they went through a lot of shit to get there.
No, it worked out for the fair-skinned members. The dark indigenous ones, it didn't work out for them. The dark-skinned members of the tribe, when they went to Oklahoma, decades later, when the Dawes Commission comes to town, they get reclassified as freedmen, get disenfranchised, forced onto 40-acre land allotments instead of 160-acre land allotments like they were supposed to get. Then the state of Oklahoma gets formed through land rushes, things like the Sooners, land lotteries. Then after that, you got Oklahoma statehood, and the KKK is formed 1865. And now we've got segregation, racism, Black indigenous towns like Tulsa, Oklahoma. Yeah, Jim Crow laws. Black indigenous towns like Tulsa, Oklahoma, Muskogee. There's massacres. Tribes are getting broken up by the Dawes Commission. So no, it was not all rainbow and sunshine. Yeah.
It's funny because I went through high school in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and whenever I never heard about the massacre. I didn't hear about the massacre until here, the last 6 years actually. That happened in
You're
Tulsa.
from Tulsa, you lived in Tulsa, you go to high school in Tulsa, and they don't even mention, hey, there was a famous Black indigenous town called Black Wall Street that we got jealous of, so we burned to the ground, carpet bombed, massacred.
Yeah, and I'd never heard anything about that until, what was it, 4 or 5 years ago or something like that.
Mm-hmm. That's by
I was
design.
like, what movie was that? It was some superhero movie where it started off with the thing in Tulsa. I think that was actually where first. What was that? I can't even think of what it's called now. But there was some superhero movie where the superhero was black. It's the one with the girl.
Oh, it's the one with the what was his name?
And it starts
this
off
black
with,
dude who's bulletproof.
yeah,
Luke Cage. I think it's Luke Cage.
Luke Cage. And it starts in the Tulsa riot.
Damn.
Or massacre.
I didn't know that. I've never seen an episode of Luke Cage.
Oh, I don't think.
Oh, no. It wasn't Luke Cage. It was Watchmen. It was the Watchmen TV show. Yeah. The Watchmen one.
Okay.
Yep. Shout out to Jan. Yeah, that's exactly how it started. I remember now.
That was like the first time I'd actually heard of that. And I was like, I know they base a lot of this stuff on fact. So I started looking it up. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. Because when you look at Tulsa, the way it's built now is the rich people keep moving south. I don't know if you ever seen, I hate to get off topic. You ever watched Outsiders? Remember that old show with Ralph Macchio or all that? The Greasers and the Socias, old show.
But from what I understand about Tulsa, based on what I understand about Tulsa and the geography, it's like most Black indigenous settlements in the 70s when the I-5 and highway system was built. They run the highway through it, and then one side of the highway is the poor Black side, and then the other side gets gentrified, right?
Well, you have the north and south. You have 11th Street, and it goes north and starts going into letters, and that's actually where the Black indigenous live, and the south is where the rich move into, and keeps moving south and more. And
there's a freeway or some kind of overpass that separates it, right?
Route 66. You ever heard of that Route 66?
Yeah, Route 66.
It was right there in the middle, which also ran by train tracks. And being from the wrong side of the train tracks, that's where that term came from. Gotcha. If you're from the north side of the train tracks, you were poor.
I feel it.
And that was the area where they pretty much destroyed the Black Wall Street and bought their land for pennies.
Tell it all the time.
Pretty messed up.
But hey, I got some more people backstage, so go ahead and give us some closing remarks. Let us know what else is on your mind, and then I got to segue to next step.
My one question was, why do you think you are getting? This is like that guy I gave you pushback. Why do you?
That's cool. I'm getting pushback for various reasons. The reason why we get pushback from the people on the reservation is because they're hoarding resources, and a lot of them descend from European hybrids or just straight up fraudulent Europeans who paid to get part of the tribe. Hey, you're from Oklahoma. You've seen some real white people that got them tribal cards.
Yep.
I know you've seen it, right?
Yep.
So that's why we get the pushback from the reservation crowd. The reason why we get the pushback from the Africans is because, let me just speak candidly. Africans are demonized and known globally as global failures. The only thing that they've ever had going for themselves is their alleged kinship to us. It somehow gives them some kind of pride or some kind of sense of motivation to think that somehow they're associated with us. They're like our distant relatives somehow, because correct me if I'm wrong, but Black American culture is world renowned. I mean, it's everything. I mean, rock, blues. I mean, everything. Hip hop. Right? I mean, there's so much of our culture that's acknowledged, honored, and revered globally. So Africans kind of try to attach themselves to that. And a lot of Africans are just getting miseducated like everybody else to think that all Black Americans come from West African slaves. So when they hear that we're delineating from them, that we actually did our genealogy and we're indigenous, it triggers them in a sense. The reason why we get the pushback from the Europeans is because they colonized our land and are still occupying it now, 500 years later. And the whole dynamic changes if we realize who we truly are. Right now, you got some Black Americans advocating for reparations here and there, but reparations for slavery is a $1 to $2 trillion claim. If we nationally did our genealogy, realize that not only do we descend from some folks who were enslaved on plantations, but in fact, we descend from reclassified indigenous tribes who were enslaved in place, then now our rectification claim becomes so much larger because we have to talk about all the wealth that's been extracted, the land that's been surveyed, deed, mortgaged, the pharmaceutical industry that's been built off the back of local herbology, the crops that we cultivate that are indigenous to the Americas that are exported and feed the world. I mean, if we get on code and realize our true claim, then that goes from $1 to $2 trillion to $30 to $60 trillion. So Europeans have a vested interest in keeping Black Americans believing they come from Africa. You may not know the history, but Black indigenous tribes in the Southeast were massacring European settlers, European squatters that were coming to their land. Look up the Fort Mims massacre. They said that that was the largest loss of life till 9/11. And that was my tribe, the Creek Indians. The Red Stick faction went to the settlement called Fort Mims that was filled with Europeans and half-breed Creek Indians, and we took them out. The Yamasee War of 1715, they were taking out white settlers. Seminole War 1, 2, 3, they're fighting Andrew Jackson. So if we don't realize that we come from these warlike tribes of the Southeast that were fighting against the colonization we have today, well, guess what? We don't pick up that fight. We don't. If anything, they can try to convince us we come from Africa, and then through media and propaganda, convince us to go back to Africa. And now we're voluntarily deporting ourselves and being expats in Africa, and it's all a psyops.
I mean, the only problem I have with this whole thing is the Native Americans saying that they own the land which were conquered. It's the way things happened back then. You know, everyone conquered each other. Then the Seminole and the Cherokee and the Comanche, and they were all slaughtering each other, taking land. It's
no.
The white people came in and made it permanent.
Time out. That's probably what they taught you in grade school in Oklahoma. That's not the reality. And the only way that you have that sentiment is, oh, well, you guys lost the war, is because those aren't your people. If you knew the history of your Irish ancestors who were taken out by the British and the Scottish Highlander War and all this stuff, then you'd have some negative sentiment towards the British for what they did to your ancestors. You wouldn't say, oh, well, my ancestors lost, so it just is what it is, especially when you look into the tactics used. We're talking about biological terrorism laying the foundation of the colonization of the Americas.
I don't know.
Time out. Don't interrupt me when I'm speaking. Yes, they did know what biological terrorism was. Europeans have been using biological terrorist tactics for centuries before they even started to colonize the Americas. What are you talking about? Europeans, since the Middle Ages and previously, were throwing diseased corpses and catapults over sieged walls to infect populations. Europeans are responsible for the largest source of bloodshed of their own people. So how dare you compare that to some local tribes having a skirmish here or there? Obviously, you don't know about the Inquisition, the Reconquista, the War on the Commons, the enclosure of the Commons, the Holy Wars. Do we have to talk about the witch trials? Do we have to talk about when Europeans went all around Europe slaying people that they claimed were pagans and putting their heads in guillotines? What are we talking about? Your own Irish ancestors have been butchered by other European factions, and you don't know your own people's history, which is why you're so insensitive to ours. If you actually knew the history of what was going on in Ireland, if you actually knew that Native American communities fed your whole island with the potato that's indigenous to here, by the way, then maybe you'd be a little bit more empathetic towards the plight. But something I have to quickly fact check you on is you said that Europeans didn't know anything about biological terrorism. Just for the sake of time, just because I have somebody waiting patiently backstage, I'm going to educate you on this and my audience in a rapid fashion, a very, very rapid fashion. Check this out. And stay on mute while I do this. Are you there? I just had somebody make the asinine claim that the European colonizers didn't know anything about biological terrorism. Can you give me case studies throughout time of Europeans participating in biological terrorism in their wars and skirmishes? Also, this person just made a very minimus statement about Native Americans warring with each other, butchering each other. So, European colonists beating them in wars and taking their land is no big deal. And the person said they take issue with Native Americans claiming this is their land. So, can you really speak to the nefarious tactics that were used, such as biological terrorism, which no community with any sense of morality would view as a actual valid battle tactic? But furthermore, can we talk about these treaties that were broken, since this person made the asinine statement that, oh, they just lost the battle and that was all? Actually, I believe the first D of colonization is diplomacy. And they had treaties, contracts with us. We even had indigenous emissaries that traveled to Europe and spoke to kings and queens to broker arrangements. And it wasn't until Europeans had a large foothold on the East Coast that they began to spread out post revolution and seize lands through very nefarious means, such as rape, torture, massacring, biological terrorism, debt, slavery, and many other things. So can you just quickly, in a rapid fashion, provide us with some sources, case studies, dates, quotes, so that you can educate my guests and my live audience? Go ahead.
Absolutely. Let's dive into that. And I'll go ahead and give you a quick rundown of some of the most notorious examples of biological warfare and broken treaties so you can set the record straight. First up, biological warfare by European colonizers is not some wild theory. It's a documented reality. For instance, during Pontiac's Rebellion in 1763, British officers at Fort Pitt discussed and then actually handed out smallpox-infected blankets to indigenous people. This is one of the most famous examples of using disease as a weapon. Now, let's talk treaties. The idea that Native Americans just lost a battle and that's all is an oversimplification that ignores how colonization really went down. Europeans entered into hundreds of treaties with indigenous nations, and these treaties were supposed to be binding agreements. However, they were repeatedly broken whenever it suited the colonizers. A prime example is the Treaty of Fort Laramie in 1868, which guaranteed the Lakota their land in the Black Hills. That treaty was violated as soon as gold was found there. As for the notion that everyone was just fighting each other anyway, that's a common argument used to downplay the unique level of betrayal and brutality involved in colonization. Yes, indigenous nations had conflicts, but that doesn't justify or equate to the systematic use of broken treaties, biological warfare, and outright genocide that followed European arrival. In short, you've got a whole arsenal of historical evidence to point to. So feel free to drop those receipts on your guests and let them know that history is a lot more complicated than just they lost a battle.
Well, also let's do a direct comparison if we can. He's making it seem like indigenous tribes were so warlike and butchering one another. Can you give him a breakdown of all of the European holy wars, massacres, witchcraft, inquisitions? Correct me if I'm wrong, but European brutality, European bloodshed is a global phenomenon, which is why they were able to come over here and take over indigenous tribes, because we had not developed such sophisticated methods of war since we were more peace-like in nature. But give me some dates, some war, some time, some estimates of people killed, so that this descendant of Irish Europeans can understand that even his own Irish people fell victim to the barbarity of Europe.
Absolutely. Let's put this into perspective with a little history lesson. When it comes to European brutality, there is a long, grim track record that stretches across continents. First, consider the Crusades, which were a series of religious wars between the 11th and 13th centuries. These wars led to the mass slaughter of not only Muslims and Jews, but also Eastern Orthodox Christians. Then we have the Inquisitions, notably the Spanish Inquisition starting in the late 15th century, which involved the torture and execution of countless people accused of heresy and witchcraft. We can't forget the European wars of religion in the 16th and 17th centuries, like the 30 Years' War, 1618 through 1648, which devastated Central Europe and resulted in millions of deaths. The violence and bloodshed during these wars were extreme, and the civilian population suffered enormously. Let's also talk about colonial brutality outside the Americas. In Africa and Asia, European powers engaged in brutal conquests and genocidal campaigns. For example, the Belgian atrocities in the Congo Free State under King Leopold II in the late 19th and early 20th centuries led to the deaths of millions of Congolese people through forced labor, mutilation, and violence. And yes, even the Irish experienced brutal colonization under the English, particularly during the Cromwellian conquest of Ireland in the mid 17th century, which resulted in widespread massacres and the forced displacement of Irish populations. So, to your point, European history is indeed filled with large scale violence that often went far beyond the scope of intertribal conflicts among indigenous peoples. The level of organized state sponsored warfare and colonization was on a scale that indigenous societies simply hadn't matched because they didn't wage war in the same global industrialized manner. In other words, if someone wants to argue that indigenous people were just as brutal, they're ignoring the sheer scale and systematic nature of European colonization and warfare. Feel free to lay down those facts and dates to put things in context.
Well, let's close it out with this, especially since this person has Irish heritage. Can we more so speak to the Scottish Irish displacement that was going on with Cromwell and other events? Because it's very interesting how the Scottish and the Irish are literally colonized, enslaved, yet they then come to the Southeast and start colonizing and enslaving indigenous American populations. I mean, it's so interesting how a people who just had the same thing done to them in Europe would come over here and perpetuate the same crimes. Furthermore, I think to really round this out, we also have to speak about how the enclosure of the commons was going on at the same time that the British colonies were expanding, which is why most Europeans came over here as debt slaves, indentured servants, beheld to corporate entities, and how it's quite interesting how even though they were used as pawns, even cannon fodder, to be placed in buffer zones between different Spanish colonies or French colonies and Black indigenous tribes. I mean, even though they were used as pawns by the European elite, they're now modern day perpetuating misinformation that's propagated by these same elitists that basically enslaved them and shipped them to America in the first place.
Absolutely. Let's tie it all together because it is quite a twist of historical irony. So, if we're looking at the Scottish and Irish experience under figures like Oliver Cromwell, we're talking about people who were brutally colonized themselves. In the mid 17th century, Cromwell's conquest of Ireland led to mass displacement, killings, and the forced removal of many Irish Catholics. Large numbers of Irish and Scots were sent into indentured servitude or became part of the colonial project, often against their will. Now, the enclosure of the commons back in Britain was another big factor. This was a process where common lands that ordinary people had used for farming and grazing were fenced off and privatized, pushing many people into poverty and making them more likely to end up as indentured servants in the colonies. So these folks came to America not as high ranking colonizers, but often as pawns, used as a buffer between wealthy elites and indigenous populations. The irony, as you pointed out, is that despite their own history of displacement and servitude, many Scots-Irish settlers ended up perpetuating the same kinds of injustices against indigenous peoples in the Americas. They were placed in frontier areas as a sort of human shield, and over time, they adopted the colonial mindset. So when people of that heritage dismiss indigenous claims, it's a bit of historical amnesia. The very people who were once oppressed turned around and became part of a system that oppressed others. It's a cycle of colonization that really underscores how these injustices rippled through history. So feel free to let your audience know that history is full of these complexities and that there's a lot more to the story than just everyone was fighting each other. This is about how power and oppression worked in layers and how we need to remember all those layers to get the full picture.
Damn. So again, guys, that was for my audience, not so much for the panelists. When we hear these Europeans perpetuate these notions of, oh, well, you guys lost the war, that's it, this isn't really your land. Well, it's crazy because you just got enslaved, kicked out of your own land, sent over here, and then perpetuated the same violence on indigenous communities. As ChatGPT just said, you guys have historical amnesia. But again, they don't teach you this in school. You don't know anything about your culture, your heritage, how you guys came over to America. So I don't blame you that much. But Mike, what do you think about this? So I'm sure they never taught you this in school, right?
None of that. I mean, they hint at it a little bit around the edges, you know. Like I said, the how the dark skin became more popular slave. I mean, because they brought the white slaves over with them, but they kept running off and couldn't find them. So then they started. I guess you're saying, I mean, because I was up in the Northeast. Because, like, I mean, the story of the Pilgrims, when we got along with the Indians, and I guess according to you, we enslaved them after that. Even
Pilgrims
though we needed the
Pilgrims never
Indians
got
to
along.
teach us how to.
Pilgrims never got along with the Native Americans. Thanksgiving is a myth. Chief Pontiac did not go there to break bread. He came there with a war council. Hundreds of indigenous people were there, and it was a very uneasy time because the poor colonists were given food by us, and they were allowed to build a little settlement that was about an acre large because they lied and said they needed to repair their ships and they were going to leave once the seasons changed. But they kept squatting and kept overstaying their welcome and kept overstaying their welcome. Matter of fact, real quick, just because you mentioned pilgrims and the whole Thanksgiving thing, and Thanksgiving is coming up as well. I think it's very, very good that we touch on this ever so briefly. Check this out, guys. Can you tell us the true history of the Pilgrims, how their interactions with the indigenous tribes in the Northeast were? Because we're fed a story in public school that, you know, they were friends of the Indians and the Indians helped them and saved them from starving. And there's this whole Thanksgiving myth. When in actuality, in my research, I forget the exact name of the chief, but he actually went to that settlement with a war party, I believe. And it was a very uneasy time. And correct me if I'm wrong, but the Europeans came conducting trade, claiming that they were not there permanently. They were there to maybe fix their ship or leave once the tides of the ocean change. And then over time, they keep squatting and inviting more of their people over, kidnapping elite Indian children, hostaging them, sending them to Europe, trying to spiritually convert them. This is why on the Northeast, we have Harvard University that was actually created as an Indian conversion center and many other Ivy League institutions. Can you fill us in on that Northeastern history?
Absolutely. Let's dive into that Northeastern history and peel back the layers of the Thanksgiving myth a bit. So the Pilgrims, or the English separatists who arrived in 1620, definitely didn't walk into a land of open arms and friendly potlucks. The Wampanoag people were the indigenous nation that the Pilgrims encountered, and their leader, often referred to as Chief Massasoit, did indeed interact with them, but it was a very cautious relationship. It was not this cozy, idealized friendship that the Thanksgiving story would have us believe. In reality, the Wampanoag had just been devastated by diseases brought by earlier European explorers. This left them in a vulnerable position, and they were dealing with their own political dynamics and conflicts with other tribes. Massasoit saw a temporary alliance with the Pilgrims as a strategic move to strengthen his own position against rival tribes. So yes, there was a sort of treaty or a mutual agreement, but it was a wary one, built on necessity rather than genuine trust. Over time, the English settlers did exactly what you said. They expanded, they brought over more colonists, and they did not leave. They took hostages, including indigenous children who were sometimes sent to Europe, and they established institutions like Harvard, which originally had the goal of converting indigenous people to Christianity and assimilating them. The story we get in school is a very sanitized version of this history. In truth, the Pilgrim survival was based on a fragile and often tense relationship. As more settlers arrived and as the colonists grew in number, they increasingly took land, broke agreements, and sparked conflicts like King Philip's War in the 1670s, which was one of the bloodiest conflicts in early American history. So that's the fuller picture. The Pilgrims were not just innocent refugees seeking religious freedom and instantly making friends. They were part of a larger pattern of colonization that involved deception, broken promises, and the eventual displacement of indigenous people. It's a more complex and sobering story than the Thanksgiving myth, but it's the truth behind how that history really unfolded.
Go ahead, Mike. You have the floor.
Yeah, that's different. Oh boy.
I know all your life you've been living a lie. I know.
Yeah, there's a lot to take in. I know trying to think. I mean, how long it was the Pilgrims you're saying that founded Harvard? Or I was kind of confused how we got from Pilgrims to Harvard. Just
because those same
is this
pilgrims
example of
because those same pilgrims expand and create institutions to convert local Indians to Christianity.
Yeah.
So, you know, if they were really peace-loving religious people, why are they trying to forcibly convert and hostage and steal Indian children and send them to Europe? I mean, we hear the story of Pocahontas. I guess you missed the part where Pocahontas died in Europe as a hostage.
Well, I mean, I can see that. I mean, this is the time of the Inquisition and all that stuff was going on. If you
Yep. Well, quickly flesh out your thoughts. I got 3 more people backstage, so let us know what's on your mind. It looks like you got some research to do on your own time, huh?
Yeah, a little bit. I appreciate the info. A lot to think about because I mean, all right. I appreciate your time and thanks for the info.
Yeah, you take it easy, Mike. Nice talking to you. All right. Next caller we've got is next up, and then we're going to switch over to TikTok. We've got somebody who's been waiting patiently on TikTok, the Black Vault. Next up, then the Black Vault. Next up, where are you calling in from?
What's up, man? I'm from Louisiana, bro. Like, I see what you're doing. You know what I'm saying?
Time out. You're moving a little fast. You said Louisiana. Where's your family from originally?
Just mainly Louisiana, bro. But I trace my ancestry all the way to Nigeria, Mali, and all other places in Africa too. But I had a little bit of Native American.
So your ancestors are originally from Africa would be the answer to the question.
You heard me? That dominant gene, African, bro.
I didn't ask you if a dominant gene was African. I asked you where your family's from, and it sounds like the answer is Nigeria.
Even the people, even the videos and the pictures you see, bro, them people don't...
Sir, I'm asking you a very specific question. Are you saying your family is from Nigeria? Yes or no?
Hey, mostly Nigerian, bro. When I look at the Nigerian people, I can see me in them.
Okay. You're saying your family's from Nigeria. When you look at the Nigerian people, you can see you in the Nigerian people. I got you. Who told you that you're from Nigeria?
You can find my nose, bro. But back to the native people.
No. We're not getting to a native piece yet. I just asked you a question. Who told you that you're from Nigeria?
Bro, I done took DNA tests, bro.
You took DNA tests. So it's not oral tradition passed down from your family. You didn't do genealogy and find paper trail records to suggest you descend from Nigerians trafficked here as slaves. You're getting this from a DNA test. Is that right?
I don't want to believe it, bro. Like you don't. Okay, what food do you eat that's Native American that you like?
Corn, dummy. But we aren't here to talk about our indigenous food, which you also partake in. I'm just wondering if you have any other evidence besides the DNA test to say that you're Nigerian. Like grandma didn't say you're Nigerian or nothing?
Cuisine you like?
I asked you a question. Did your grandmother say you're Nigerian? Yes or no?
Exactly, bro. Like, bro, you is not Native American.
And you're a Nigerian migrant obsessed with our heritage. Nobody's up here trying to convince you that you're not Nigerian, but you think that you can call into my show and try to convince me that I'm not indigenous to America? This ain't working out good for you. This ain't a good look. You're moving your mouth right now. No one hears you. You don't even realize you're muted, but you're so passionate with your ignorance. So time out. You're still on mute. No one can hear you. Relax, Nigerian man living in Louisiana. Relax. I just asked you a question. Did your grandma ever tell you your family comes from Nigeria? Yes or no?
I can tell we eat okra, bro.
Okay, so we're not going to get an answer. You're bringing up okra. Okay. How about this? Can you name your Nigerian ancestor? Yes or no? Can you name your Nigerian ancestor?
Bro, yeah, I can name. I don't know his name exactly, but it's one of them long ass names, bro.
Okay. You don't know the name exactly, but it's a long ass name. You up here lying because you said the only way you think you're Nigerian is from a DNA test, and no DNA test gave you a name of a Nigerian ancestor. Tony B says, don't disrespect him, bruv. Oh, this is an African in the UK. Tony says, don't disrespect him, bruv. You weren't like this with the white man. No, I wasn't, because the white man didn't come up here talking about, you guys aren't native, you're not indigenous, you're from Africa. This dumb nigga came up here with this shit. The white man listened. The white man learned. The white man took in new information. The white man said some shit that was out of pocket, and we corrected it respectfully. But even the white man didn't come off as imbecilic as this Negro up here, talking about some okra and a DNA test and his nose. And he's still running his mouth when no one can hear him. Shit. This is what we're going to do, Playboy. I want to give you space to speak uninterrupted. So just give me 2 seconds. Audience members, put a 0 in the chat if you want to get on to the next caller and you don't want to hear any more of him. Put a 1 in the chat if you want me to give him 2 minutes uninterrupted on the timer so he can just get it all off his chest. He's talking about okra makes him Nigerian. He's talking about all this stuff. Put a 1 in the chat if you want to give him 2 minutes. If even one person gives him a 1 in the chat, I'll give him 2 minutes on the timer. If even one person, and Tony B, you should call in. We would love to hear what an African migrant in the UK has to say and why you think that you're a part of this conversation. We would love to figure out why an African hiding out in Europe is in the chat right now. This is crazy. All right, I see a lot of zeros on YouTube, a lot of zeros on TikTok, but some people are putting 1s in the chat, and I'm a man of my word. So give me just a second. Let me bring up an online timer. Let me also bring up a notepad because I know he's going to say a lot of things and we're going to have to take notes and address them one by one when he's finished. We'll give him 2 minutes uninterrupted. I got my notepad ready. Next up, your time starts when you start speaking. Go.
Bro, them people on them pictures do not look like us. Now, I can say that there probably was a colored people group, most definitely, that was here in America, but they wasn't the Afro type. Them people was more like the black people, indigenous people of Australia. You know what I'm saying? Them people do not look like the black Afro people in the hood, in my hood. You heard me? In Louisiana. Them people do not look like us. Them people more so look like Mexicans today. You know what I'm saying? They long nose, the way they head look like an eagle, damn near, like they facial features are different. That's how they could tell when your skeletons in the ground, in the dirt, and they can tell, oh, this person was an African American because you have a specific, features. You heard me? Them people do not look like us, even on them pictures. You heard me? Them people got silk hair. We got coarse hair. You hear me? Like look at them people hair. Them people used to get lice. Them people, we don't even get lice. You hear me? Them people dealt with lice. If you look at Native American history, they constantly dealt with lice. You hear me? I never had lice. I never knew anybody in my family with lice. So that's ancient. Lice in Native American history is ancient. That's one red flag. Half of the shit that they eat, we don't even like it. You know what I'm saying? Our cuisine is mostly related to African cuisine. We like okra. Okra come from Africa. We like watermelon. Watermelon come from Africa. The watermelon we eat, you know what I'm saying? The jollof rice, the dirty rice, the jambalaya in Louisiana.
Dang. Time is up. His time is up. Jesus. The only thing that I gathered is his favorite word is, you heard me? You heard me? Okay. Jesus. So ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the first asinine point he made is he said people on the pictures don't look like us. That's an interesting statement, because when I bring up the photo of my grandfather, who was the Chief Justice of the Muskogee Creek Nation, who was a famous town king, who's listed on the Dolls Roll as a full-blooded Indian, many people in my chat tell me all the time how I look just like my grandfather. But I guess these photos don't look like us. Maybe they don't look like you because you're a Nigerian migrant. We're not. Matter of fact, I'm surprised that you were even using the word us so much. You're not a part of our community. You're clearly a first, second, or third generation migrant up here, because there's no way that you would actually Louisiana and be talking about Black Indians don't exist when the Black Indians out there doing ceremonies every other Sunday, dummy. What is he talking about? He's clearly a migrant up here. And that's cool. Just be a proud Nigerian migrant. Don't get up here and cosplay. It's not a good look. If you're a Nigerian, then you're a Nigerian. We're not. We actually do our genealogy. You taking DNA tests. You can't even name a Nigerian ancestor. I named my indigenous ancestor. His face is right here, dumbass. But you can't show me a picture of your African ancestor. But you trying to convince all of us that we have the same African ancestry as you. You are too uneducated to even have this conversation. I can tell because your vernacular is so limited. You heard me. So guys, go ahead and vote again. Put a 0 in the chat if you don't want to hear what he has to say anymore. Put a 1 in the chat if you want to give him another 2 minutes uninterrupted. Come on. Oh, he fled like an African migrant does. Thank God. We don't even... Whoa. Not man's fleeing like a migrant. Not him saying he comes from Nigerian migrants and then he fled just like a migrant. Okay. All right. Okay. I digress. Shout out to the folks tuned in on TikTok. Shout out to the folks watching on YouTube. We've got a live caller backstage on the YouTube side of things. We're going to bring them up in just a moment. But first, let me see what the audience is saying about that last interaction. I mean, we had the white man come up. He asked questions. He was open to new information. We educated him on the true history of his Irish heritage, how he found his way to Oklahoma. And then we had an ignorant Negro from Louisiana call up saying that there's no such thing as Black indigenous people and everybody comes from Nigeria because he did a DNA test and it said he came from Nigeria. Oh, okay. All right. And the sources were okra. He said something about we eat okra. Guys, I don't know about you. I've never eaten okra a day in my life. I don't know what okra tastes like. Apparently he thinks all of us eat okra. Okay. Let me see what you guys are talking about in the chat before we bring up our next caller. This is crazy. Your word says he should see my great grandfather who is an Indian. Hey, shout out to Irene Jones in the building. Damn, Caesar says, and this is why I love being a native Black American. Yeah, everyone's infatuated with us. We have folks from the res calling in, trying to dictate heritage to us. We've got African migrants, EBA, everywhere but Africa, trying to call in and dictate heritage to us. You know, Europeans call in with the occasional, trust me, bro, you all come from Africa, dude. And then, of course, the Latinos. Oh, boy, the Latinos. Latinos have one of the biggest identity crises out there of them all. And that's actually why the prompt of the day is as follows. Latinos and Africans have the biggest identity crisis. Black Americans are indigenous to America. Prove me wrong. Call in. You heard me? Hey guys, correct me if I'm wrong. Did he say you heard me like a bajillion fucking times up here or what? I'm just like, sir, if you have to keep saying you heard me as a verbal crutch, that just shows you don't really have the linguistic know-how nor the academic acumen to truly have this discussion. I mean, Mans didn't even do his genealogy. He took a DNA test, right? Come on. Marty says all the foods he named come from the Americas. Yeah. He's talking about we don't eat native food. I guess he's never eaten corn or tomatoes or potatoes or chocolate, which comes from cacao, peanuts, indigenous to South America. I mean, let's talk about it. You know, in our community, we love us some hot sauce, right? We love us some hot sauce. Oh, Lord, do we love some hot sauce. And coincidentally, all of our hot sauce comes from where? Where does all of our hot sauce get made and packaged and sold from? Louisiana. Oh, yes, Louisiana. Not only that, but the key ingredient is so prevalent that sometimes hot sauce companies even just name their company after this key ingredient, the Tabasco pepper. And where is the Tabasco pepper indigenous to? Oh, right on the other side of the Gulf. Tabasco, Mexico. What's so significant about Tabasco, Mexico? That's the Yucatan Peninsula. This is Black Indigenous Olmec territory. So see, when you connect the dots, I mean, there's so many things even within our culinary disciplines that speak to our indigeneity. But Mans was just up here triggered about some okra. You heard me? Let me see what y'all are talking about. Cal says, out of Africa theory is crazy. You know what's crazy? I had an African call in from the UK the other day. The African called in from London. He said, "Hey, all of you guys come from Africa." I said, well, what makes you say that? He said, "Africa's the motherland." I said, well, what makes you think it's the motherland? And if it's the motherland, why are you calling in from Europe? He said, "Africa's the motherland because of the out of Africa theory." I said, "Sir, do you know who propagated that theory, where that theory comes from?" It was like pulling teeth, but he finally admitted. He finally said no. And then I had to educate him on the fact that the out of Africa theory comes from Darwin. Charles Darwin, the racist eugenicist that created the theory of natural selection and God's favored races. They tell you the first half of the title, theory of natural selection. They don't tell you the second half, God's favored races, because it was on some Nazi, eugenicist type shit, right? White supremacist type shit, right? But we literally have African migrants hiding out in Europe quoting racist eugenicist theories to support their affinity to us. Make it make sense. If we're really supposed to believe that Africa is the cradle of civilization and everybody in the world comes from an African, then we'll believe that as soon as Europeans start identifying as African European, as soon as the Asians start identifying as African Asiatic. Let's talk about it. I've never heard somebody call themselves an African Spaniard before, but we're supposed to take on this false African identity because some migrants want to dictate heritage to us. Okay. All right. We got a couple people backstage. Let me see what the chat's talking about before we bring them up. Yeah. He don't know about the butternut squash. Let's talk about it. He don't know. Hey, he probably think all that stuff is Mexican food. That's what it is. What you mean Native American food? You mean Mexican food? Okay. All right. Yeah, Caesar. We got to say it for the ones in the back. Come on. Irene Jones says, "I've never heard anyone from New Orleans claim African, myself included." Yeah. That's why I'm like, you have to be a first or second generation Nigerian migrant in Louisiana to say that Black indigenous people don't exist when Louisiana is literally filled with them. They out there doing masking Indian ceremonies every other Sunday. Come on. All right, let's go ahead and bring up our next caller. Let me see. Tilteca, go ahead. Let us know where you're calling in from and what's on your mind.
Peace, Mike. Long-time listener, first-time caller. So I've always enjoyed your content, brother. So it's exciting to, finally reach out to you. I got some time today, and I've been listening to you, a couple of your videos the last couple of days, and I said, man, you know what? I'm going to try to make some time if he goes live this weekend or whatever. So I appreciate you, brother, and just keep doing what you're doing. But I'm not going to be too long, man. It's so funny that when you hear somebody like that last guy who's from Louisiana, kind of just oblivious to something that, that's just, it's evident, it's right there, so he obviously is either just a brother in the hood that just ain't never been out of the hood, like literally in the outside of his blocks, or he's a second, third generation immigrant, like you mentioned. But I like to point out certain things, really obscure things that most people don't really think about. And you're kind of starting to touch on those points regarding the gastronomy, the cuisine. One thing that I always talk about, and I've talked about for years, is that, and I lived and traveled in Mexico for some time, but I live in Dallas now. But most of when you talk about Native American cuisine here in the North, what people don't understand, and maybe this will help their brother out, like you can't go to any like so-called Native American, the people who are popularly considered Native American today in the powwows and stuff. You can't go to any of their ceremonies, specifically powwows, and find any traditional dishes. I've never heard, the first time I heard of succotash was from my grandmother. Okay. I had never, ever heard of Native Americans creating any type of dish out of these supposed three sisters that they said that they cultivated, and that the popular opinion says that they cultivated, but they've not created one meal out of it. I mean, when I say one meal,
thing they've created is fried bread, which is just fried flour dough. I mean,
their rations. It was their rations from the BI. Yeah. So it's like,
meanwhile, our struggle meals will be something like gourmet top ramen or something, right?
That's what I'm trying to get them to see. Like, even our struggle meals were like, have turned into a cuisine, delicacy. You know what I mean? And so it's like they went and did fry bread, and that's what has become, the most popular gastronomic, piece of evidence for them being, Indian, if you will. But I mean, it's just so crazy. And then other things when you're talking about New Orleans, and I like to hit people with trivia, really short, I guess short form content for guys like you who are content creators. But like when you talk about New Orleans, the only song in the history of songs that uses Native American lyrics and made the Billboard charts was written by a black man from Louisiana, Sugar Boy Crawford, and it was popularized by a black girls group from the 60s, the Dixie Cups. Iko, right? So it's like the only Native Americans that did anything with music was that "Come and Get Your Love." Yep. Like that's they didn't.
Bones.
Yeah, the Redbones. Nobody ever. I haven't heard any traditional. Like it's like crazy. So you know what I mean? Like it's just stuff like that. Like we took some lyrics, and yeah, we're the only ones that made a Billboard hit out of a song with Native American lyrics, but we're not the originals. It just doesn't make sense. You know what I mean? And like, I'll land my plane, man, and I'm gonna keep listening. But if you look at my name, that last name, and you didn't bother try to pronounce the first one, but that second one, Tlilteca, and this is just from my experience.
I'll try the first one.
Go ahead.
Quachikwe.
Now you said it perfectly. Now, what people don't understand, you showed a picture. You showed a picture earlier of that Aztec, the Quachikwe warrior, with the had the Mongoloid Indian by the hair. I don't know if you can bring that back up, but that's a very important.
Just a second, I'll bring that up. Yeah, I show that all the time because people be like, "Where's your writing? Where's your language?" Y'all know that we have petroglyphs, hieroglyphs, codexes.
See that brother right there? That brother right there. Number one, he has.
Oh shoot! Hold on. That's on the slideshow. I'm gonna try to bring him back up. Hold on, I'll bring him.
But if you, go ahead. When you look at that, take a good look at it. First of all, you can see what seems like an American flag almost, you know what I mean? But that's just a whole nother conversation. But what's important about this particular warrior or military unit among the so-called Aztecs, the Quachikwe, and this is just my opinion from the studying I've been doing for about 15 years, the Quachikwe.
That's the same image of the black tall figure holding the motherfucker by the hair. Damn, that's the same image.
That's Quachikwe. That's him. Now, Quachikwe was a military unit in the Aztec military. They were basically like the special forces, the Green Berets, if you will. Now, in my opinion, based on the name, the Quachikwe means the shorn ones because of the hairstyle. Now, it's my opinion that the Quachikwe were sent out by various so-called Aztec Tlatoanis or the rulers at different points in times in different parts of the Americas. And that's how we get the term Cacique. Cacique became the name of, it's like the tribal head, if you will. And I think that name is a corruption of the term Cacique. And the reason I say that is because there's evidence of the Aztecs going down to Panama, and the Spanish found Aztecs in Panama when Balboa and them got there. They found Aztecs that because they had already had experience with them, and they said, "Hey, these people aren't from here. These people are Aztecs." And when they asked the local Indians who these folks were, when the local being the Mongoloid Indians, they said that these people are the Sigua, but the word Sigua just meant foreigner, right? Now,
I got you.
I always talk about these folks because sometimes you really have to be thorough in the research, and you already understand this, Mike. Like the brother that called that, he's not gonna get it because he's not gonna go that deep into the research and cross-reference. And he's gonna be looking for all of it in one place. He's not gonna cross-reference. He's not gonna buy any books, try to enlighten himself, in that regard. But what you do have to do is cross-reference. The Sigua were sent to slavery in Jamaica, where I never heard of white. I mean, white slaves were different parts. Say it again.
Just like the Yamasee.
Yeah, they were sent to, and that's how because these people were sent to slave colonies where all the people were black, and so you don't have any. You can't pick out and say, hey, those are the descendants of those people who were brought from these Indian tribes, and these are the Africans. It's just all black folks down there. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And so one thing that you have to, I mean, I know it. Like you just have to cross-reference, and most people aren't going to do that. So, it gets lost in translation, but that's very important. The Kashikwe, I think, is that if you look at their military units, most of them are all black. Because if you look at other pictures in that Codex Mendoza, where that Kashikwe picture comes from, you also show the Atomi. Now, the Atomi, where we know that became an ethnic group, but that was also a military unit among the Aztec military. And it's been said that the Otomi had the sickle cell trait. You know what I mean? So it's like, it's different things that people don't really pick up on because they're looking for just like this big pie in the sky piece of evidence, and it'll never be that. You know what I mean? It's always going to be stuff that you have to piece together, like the wicks. I mean, that's clear as day. The dreadlocks, like nobody can grow hair like that. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so it's just little stuff, man. I'm gonna land my plane, but the word Tlilteca, before I let you go, the word Tlilteca is the real word that the Aztecs called themselves. It means people of the black nation, Tlilteca. All right. It's some deep shit, Mike. And this won't be my last time calling, man, but I'm gonna let you keep doing it, brother. Appreciate you.
Well, hey, hold on.
Go ahead.
Before you get out of here, another thing, like you said, most people don't understand the link to the tribes of the Southeast and the Olmec, the Maya. For example, there was a Mayan step pyramid found in a swamp island in Florida 6 years ago.
Yeah.
Stone Mayan step pyramid. Matter of fact, there was a King Tut type Aztec
Oklahoma.
tomb. Yep, Oklahoma. And actually,
I'm from Arkansas originally.
Actually, I misspoke. It wasn't an Aztec tomb. It was Mayan. It was a Mayan tomb found on a black man's farm in Oklahoma, and they said it was like a King Tut style tomb. On a Negro's farm in eastern Oklahoma are unearthed relics from the mound builders of past centuries.
Yeah.
This is the type of shit that the Smithsonian worked to cover up. It says at the top is a group of relics found in the mound built by prehistoric people near Sparrow, Oklahoma, and recently opened. Number 1 is a pipe bowl 18 inches high, made of a red stone and showing marked Mayan characteristics. Number 2 is a fragment of a charred cloth. Number 3 and 6 are conch shells from the Gulf of Mexico. And then if we go to the highlighted section at the bottom, it says right below, part of an engraved conch shell found in the mound, the head and other designs showing a marked resemblance to the art of the ancient Mayans. But people think that because of these fictitious borders and country lines and stuff, the Mayan, the Olmec are like so far away from us. Nah.
Yeah, and it's weird because most people, even the people, the brothers and sisters who are claiming the Pan-African heritage and all that, like people, it's just weird what they'll allow one group of people to profess and then what they'll deny another people, us specifically. Like so we know that the Aztecs, the people who consider themselves descendants of Aztecs today, when you ask them like what's the origin of the Aztecs, they'll tell you Aztlan in up in Wisconsin.
They migrated from elsewhere. Yeah,
they migrated
into northern Mesoamerica. They were always foreigners, and they took some of the Olmec and the Maya spiritual system and stuff and ran with it.
Exactly. And so when you put that to them, it's like it basically it's like a robot malfunctioning after getting water thrown at them. Like they just can't function from there. And like, I mean, the only thing we can do is continue to highlight it. You know what I mean? But like one thing I want, because you're from Oklahoma, but that spiral mounds, man, I feel that the stuff that I've seen, the artwork that I've seen, I think there's a reason why the spiral mound culture, I guess, is just not as widely talked about, like the Hope Well, you know, the stuff that they'll talk about in Ohio and Mississippi and further southeast. But I've always felt, when I first heard about that King Tut thing, you know, years ago, I was so surprised that you don't hear more about Oklahoma in terms of the mound building, because you only hear about the you know, after the Indian removal or whatever and the nations that were set up then. But like when I see some of these artwork, like I see hairlines, bruh, that I only see among our people. I see features that I only see among our people. You know what I mean? And it's like one thing that I living in Mexico, what that showed me is that
Hold on. You said hairlines only like our people, right? It's funny you say that because they play in our face when it comes to the Olmec heads. They purposefully always show the Olmec heads that have the helmet on.
Yeah.
When you take the helmet off, this is what they look like.
I'm gonna say you gonna have yeah.
Look at that prominent M-shaped hairline that we find in our
Come
community.
on, man.
Come on. And this is in a museum in Mexico. This Olmec head statue is literally called El Negro.
Yeah. What's happening right now, bro? They're starting to. Now, I won't. We'll have to have a couple more conversations about this. But over the last year or so, I've been challenging the UNAM. I'm not sure if you probably have heard of UNAM, but it's the major university in Mexico, the National Autonomous University of Mexico, where Dr. Ann Cyphers, who's dead now, she's the one who supposedly did the DNA studies saying that the Olmecs, quote unquote, weren't African. We always knew that they weren't African, but that's also their way of saying that they weren't black, right?
Exactly. Because people try to associate black with African. Yeah.
Exactly, right? And so we know how we have to approach that. But what's interesting is I've been in correspondence back and forth with officials from the university, and I've asked them to produce this supposed study. For the last year, I took 6 months trying to find it myself. And then over the last year, I've had email correspondence that I've documented going back and forth with the official biggest university in Mexico, asking, hey, can I get a copy? I will pay for it. I'll do whatever. I want a copy of this specific DNA study that Ann Cyphers and Enrique Villamar Becerril did. And it's crickets. I've been sent back and forth to 4 or 5 different people 4 or 5 different times. And the only reason I did this is because I'm planning, and this is small potatoes, but this is the type of stuff that we need, right? If you may have heard about that Black History mural down in Galveston, Texas, that had the Olmec head that the brother drew, and then the Mexicans came along and did a change.org petition, and the brother had to remove it. And if you read the change.org petition, and I got the shit posted up in my fucking home office, if you read the shit uses the Ann Cypher supposed DNA study as a basis for why it needs to be taken off. And so
straight to the source, you can't even get
it.
The material. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So my plan, and I hope we can, you guys, I know anybody who's interested in this would give their signature, but I'm gonna petition to have it replaced because this was a complete falsehood. Ann Cyphers they don't have any real Olmec Mayan ancient remains to even test against, because in Mesoamerica it's very, very, very hard to maintain organic matter. Just based on ecology.
Find those Black indigenous remains like Louisa, will the building that it's housed in mysteriously catches fire?
Of course. Listen, and what's crazy is that, and it's crazy, bro. Like this shit, it makes you believe in this subject will make you believe in all conspiracy theories, because as soon as that burned down, like the picture that they were trying to show now is like a cross-eyed, like a Pueblo Indian.
They burned the remains and then claimed that they found a couple and reconstructed it. And matter of fact, she looks like an Asian.
crazy, man. It is crazy. But
Crazy work.
another thing I'll tell you is that in Brazil, because I have a lot of Brazilian friends, the Brazilians, because of their proximity to Africa, they always, and they did have some Africans that were brought over, but the majority of Africans that were taken from Africa were taken to Brazil. And that's why they have that particular culture. But even then, I see a lot of Brazilians that look like South Sea Islanders, Pacific Islanders, Fijians and shit. You know what I mean?
Well, that's because the Spanish for centuries also brought Filipino slaves through the Manila
the Manila
galleon
Galleon,
route.
Acapulco. Yep. And see, that's the other thing. The people in Mexico, they will always, and it's funny, I was just kind of in leisurely reading up on this subject that, that I've been on for a long time through this last week or so. And the Mexicans have, this is funny, right? The people who document that history or try to reconstruct that history, most of them, they tried to downplay the number of Asian slaves that were brought. Oh, it was like 5,000, it was like 6,000 over the whole however many hundred years.
Yeah,
there was only one, listen, there was only one dude. There was only one professor who said there were 4 million, and he was a Filipino. He was born in a village that was greatly affected by that history. And he said there were like 4 million Filipinos, 4 million people taken from the Philippines, whether they were Japanese, Chinese, Philippines, South Asian, whatever, that were taken to Mexico. And he says that is the real number. Everybody else is downplaying it. But it's funny because my ex-wife is from Acapulco. And I always thought, based just how she looks, I always thought she was a so-called Afro-Mexican. But when I look at her more and more,
real quick. Apparently, some people don't understand this is a live call-in show. NP, don't be shy. Go ahead and click the StreamYard link in the chat and call in, because so far you're making zero evidence in my chat. MP says Asian slave trade did not create the natives. We're not talking about natives. We're talking about Latin America. Latin Americans are not indigenous to America. They are a mixture of Filipino slave brought by Spanish conquistadors, African slaves brought by Spanish conquistadors, Spanish conquistador descendants themselves, and some of them have some slight indigenous heritage because their Spanish conquistador grandpa done raped him a native girl. Right. Nobody's saying that the Asians are the Native Americans because of the Filipino slave trade. When we talk about Asiatic Bering Strait migrants, now called Native Americans, we're talking about those like in the Plains region, the high desert, Arizona, Arkansas, Utah, New Mexico. But when we talk about South America, Central America, you Asians mostly either got over through the Manila slave trade, or some of the Bering Strait migrants did come to about northern Mexico, and that's how you get the Aztec. Let's talk about it.
Exactly. Now, and see, people just, and I mean, you can bring them, but you can't, because that history is not taught. But if you go to Mexico, see, I was a sociology man. My degree is in sociology, but when I was in Mexico, just observing the people and the culture and the way that they move and the histories, like the most important saint in Mexico was an East Indian woman who was enslaved and brought to Mexico. And that's all those pretty dresses that the Mexican girls wear for the baile folklorico and all of that. Those are East Indian inspired dresses. You get what I'm saying? Like, people don't understand that, because also people don't understand, like, when people get on these types of subjects, they kind of get far out in left field and into space and try to make it metaphysical, as opposed to doing what you're doing and bringing evidence and showing this and saying,
for example, I say Latin Americans have a huge identity crisis along with Africans. That's actually tonight's prompt. Latinos and Africans, have the biggest identity crisis. Black Americans are indigenous to America. Prove me wrong, call in. This is an invitation for anybody and everybody to call in, speak their piece on the matter. But when I say Latinos have an identity crisis, I can actually show evidence to cite my claims. Watch this real quick. Watch this. I'm going to place you on mute so there's no echo. It'll only be a moment. Check it out.
Or took DNA tests. Welcome back to Tiny Theories. Today's video is going to be a little different. So I recently came across a video here on YouTube where a bunch of Latinos from different parts of Latin America, like Mexico, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, and more, took DNA tests, and they were shocked to find out just how much European ancestry they had. And honestly, I was surprised that they were surprised. So I started digging into it, and what I found was super interesting. Growing up, I always saw celebrities like Jennifer Lopez, Ricky Martin, Cameron Diaz, Kaka, and even Lionel Messi as white. Why? Because every time I traveled to Europe, people there looked exactly like them. Like, picture this. You're walking through a street in Italy and you see Lionel Messi. Let's just say he's not famous, just some random guy. He turns to you and says, "Hey, I'm Italian." Would you be shocked? Would you think he's lying? Probably not, because he looks like he belongs there. But here's something that always confused me growing up. I'd hear people say things like blacks, Asians, Hispanics, and I'd stop and think, wait a minute, what exactly are Hispanics? What are Latinos? And why are they talked about like they're a race? Let's break this down. Let me paint a picture for you. Think about two football players from the Brazilian national team. On one side, you've got Vinicius Jr. On the other side, you've got Alisson Becker. They're both Brazilian. They're both Latino. But do they look anything alike? Do you think they come from the same racial background? Are they genetically the same? Of course not. And that's the point. Latino or Hispanic isn't a race. It's a culture. It's a shared language, history, and sometimes geography. But it's not a biological identity. And treating it like one oversimplifies the rich and diverse backgrounds of millions of people.
So you see why I say they have a huge identity crisis. They're running around calling themselves Latinos, Hispanics, like that's a race when that's a culture blended because of Spanish colonization. You got the Spanish conquistadors, the Filipino influence, the East Indian influence, the African slave influence, the indigenous influence, but they're running around with a huge identity crisis in Latin America. Matter of fact, 56% of Latin America on census records identifies as white.
So, are Latinos white? Maybe. Why maybe? Because Latinos are incredibly diverse. But here's what I keep hearing all the time. They're Hispanic, not white. Like, those two things are completely separate. But let's think about this for a second. Do you know why most of Latin America speaks Spanish? Okay, this might sound crazy or even controversial to some people nowadays, borderline extreme. But Latin America speaks Spanish because of a small country in Europe called Spain. Yep, Spain, an actual European country with an actual European language called Spanish.
Come on. JJ says, what's the name of this video? This video is called Are Latinos Considered White? A Cultural and Identity Breakdown.
Mind blown. And here's the part that really seems to shock people. Spanish people are white.
Come on, tell me they don't have an identity crisis. Oh no, I'm not white. I'm Hispanic. What language do you speak? Spanish. Do you know what country that comes from? Mexico. No, it comes from Spain, and Spain is in Europe. You descend from Europeans.
Yes, native Spaniards are white Europeans. And to everyone out there who's shocked by this, let me say it loud and clear. White people aren't just British and German. Wow, shocking, right? Europe is a whole continent, not just the UK and Germany. Ever heard of Italians, Greeks, Slovakians, Polish, Lithuanians, Albanians, Portuguese, Dutch, Norwegians? Yes, they're all white too. But I know someone's going to say, but Tiny Theories, a Spanish person doesn't look like a Norwegian. And you're right, they don't look exactly the same. But guess what? They still fall under the same racial category, white. That's like saying a Senegalese man and an Ethiopian woman don't look the same, so they're not both black. Come on, of course they are.
Oh, there's not black, Playboy, African. Don't get it twisted. Don't start playing in our face now.
Variation within every racial group, but that doesn't mean they stop being part of that group. Same thing applies to Europeans. Not all white people are blonde-haired and blue-eyed Vikings. Some are tan-skinned Mediterraneans with dark hair, and they're still white. To really understand all of this, we need to look at how Latin American countries were actually created. Before European colonizers arrived, Latin America wasn't one big cultural block. It was home to indigenous civilizations, like the Aztecs in what's now Mexico, the Maya in parts of Central America.
And look at how they whitewash the heritage and the lineage of these people. Let me give you guys a couple of case studies real quick. We'll start in our very own southeast. If you look in the southeast, and for this example, we're going to just show you some iconography. We're going to show you some emblems and things of that nature, right? Check it out. We'll start in the southeast, and then we'll go to South America. Now, let me see. Are these images going to download for me? Here we go. Guys, this is the original seal of the Chickasaw tribe. This is the original seal. You can clearly see that that is a black figure. I mean, am I wrong? Quachikwe?
Yeah, I mean, it's as black as, I don't know, something funny my grandma would say, but it's black. It's dark. I mean, it looks darker than anybody in my whole family. You know what I'm saying?
Right. It's interesting how nowadays they change the Chickasaw emblem
to pink almost.
To this.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and shout out to the folks on TikTok. The folks on TikTok say they can't see my screen. Give me 2 seconds. Let me go ahead and fix that for you.
You know what?
Broadcast on YouTube, broadcasting on TikTok. Yeah, brother.
What's that? I was gonna say, why you doing that? I was gonna say it's so funny. When you brought up, I think you were going on this, about to go down this road, but when it comes to North Central South America, you can bring the heritage and the lineage down through the tunnel of time. What do I mean by that? In North America, here in the United States, in Central America, and in South America, the modern day Black populations reside in the same areas, okay? In the same areas where we consider the different homelands. So let me just give you an example. Let me just spell it out. Here in the United States, let's put it plain. The Southeast is the Black Belt. It's where the mound builders were, and now it's the population of so-called Black Americans. This is where we're from. That's our homeland, right? There's a reason for that. Same thing in Central America. When you go to Mexico, now Mexico it goes even a step further. It's a third step. So the same place, the area of Mexico that you showed just now on the map, that is considered the Olmec homeland and the Mayan homeland and the Yucatan, but specifically there's that strip, that isthmus, the strip between the Caribbean, the Gulf of Mexico, and then the Pacific side. You got Guerrero State, and then you got Oaxaca to the right, or to the east of it. You can see it right there. And then on the other side, if you go north of that, in the middle, you got Puebla right there. And then on the other,
in the world, Puebla.
Yeah, right there
the
in
Pyramid
Puebla.
of Cholula. Yep.
And if you go north of Puebla, which is not north, but it's a little further east, Veracruz and Tabasco, right? That
where
area,
the Tabasco pepper grows indigenously, and all of
And
our hot sauce.
When you said that, I was gonna say that because Tabasco, they got slave. There's a Mexican lady who's actually pretty thorough, and she's a wonderful lady, Gloria Arjona, out there in California. She shows that Tabasco and everybody knew about Veracruz, but Tabasco and Campeche, they had slaves, black slave, like slave spirituals. Like, it's part of the culture that they still sing. You get what I'm saying? But I'm gonna go down on that road. But that area right there, that's the Olmec homeland, that's the Mayan homeland, right? That is also in Veracruz, where you get the town of Janga, Veracruz. If you've ever heard of El Janga was the Black man who fought the Spanish and created the so-called first free Black settlement after the conquest anywhere in the Americas, right there in the middle of Veracruz. But right there, Veracruz, Guerrero, and Oaxaca, that is the Black homeland. Guerrero has the largest so-called Black population. Oaxaca has a very large Black population. Then on the other side, right on the other side of that, that isthmus, that strip of land, you got Veracruz, which is the other it has a large Black population. And Puebla is also very important, because if you read about the history of Puebla, as it in terms of the history of Mexico, in terms of race and how they how they categorize race, Puebla was where the country of Mexico was created. Now, Mexicans will take the historians will tell you that Mexico, by and large, was created through the union of so-called Black men marrying so-called indigenous women. Now, that's what the Mexican scholars will say. That's
Just
what
like
they
they
say.
claim that these black people, these black Indians in the Southeast are like African slaves that married indigenous women, right?
Exactly. They always tried to make it seem as we were foreigners coming in. And then nothing says that.
And
Nothing
hold
says
on,
that.
Amor over on TikTok says the first city acknowledged by Spain was in Veracruz. It was the first city, not just the black city. Okay. It was
No,
also
well,
the
yeah,
first.
I think they're talking about Veracruz in terms of the Spanish settlement. I'm talking about a black man beating some white folks over the head and saying, "Bitch, give me this is me, this is us." It was Janga. That's why they call it
No, no.
Janga Veracruz.
I think both of you are saying the same thing. She's just saying it's not just a black city, the first black city. It was the first
Oh,
city
the first
acknowledged by
city, yeah,
Spain as independent, right?
Veracruz. Right,
Yeah.
it was. And you know, another funny thing, you want to know something else?
What's up?
And most people don't know about this, but you can research it and maybe you want to do a video on it. But it's called the siege or the attack on Veracruz, 1683. The entire black population of Veracruz, Mexico, was kidnapped, enslaved, and shipped and sold in Charleston, South Carolina. 1683. Look it up.
Oh,
And it was 3 pirates who did it. And one of the 3 pirates was a black man who was a former slave of the Spanish.
which is most likely an African imported over because these Africans,
Yeah.
after they came over here as slaves, a lot of them become African conquistadors and shit.
Yeah.
Look up what's his name? Juan
Garrido.
Garrido. Yep.
Yep.
Esteban de Moor. Know, it's a lot of them. It's a lot
exactly. Of them. And you know, it's so funny, bro, because it's little stuff like that most people just won't look at. But
well,
like that.
And real quick, also, most people don't understand that the Moors, the Africans, had been coming over and doing trade with us for a long, long time. It's just once they got kicked out of Spain in 1492, they backdoored us and brought the Europeans over and started to, infiltrate our tribes and shit. But even the Taino and the Arawak, it's written in Bartolomé de la Casa's book, Historia de las Indias. He says, quote, the people of this island say that black people have come to this land from the south and the southeast, trading in gold-tipped metal spears. And Spanish conquistadors actually took those metal spears, sent them back to Spain, had them test it, and it was, the results came back as it was an African alloy. So, the Africans had been trading with us. We'd been trading with them. There's some skirmishes as well, but they later backdoor us and then become little African conquistadors working on behalf of our oppressor. Even in the Carib and the Kalinago, they say, and this is preserved in Ramon Pene's book, Relación Aquera de las Antigüedades de los Indios, 1498. He writes, they speak of men of a dark color who came from beyond the Great Sea in large canoes. We've got another one, Diego de Landa, Relación de los Casos y Yucatán, 1566. They tell of black merchants who arrived long ago from the east in boats with broad sails. Come on.
Yeah. Listen, people don't understand this, but like there's a reason that Morocco was the first. And I'm not no more, you know what I'm saying? What's the science beat? I'm none of that shit. I'm from Arkansas. I just come from a background, where I read a lot and we're kind of educated, but I just want to make sure people don't think I'm about to go on. Hey, it's the Moors. No, it's none of that. But Morocco, there's a reason Morocco was the first country or the first polity to recognize the United States. It was a reason that Morocco loaned the United States their navy, but yet these people were bringing slaves from a whole other continent. They had to borrow a navy from Morocco. Right. That's a whole nother issue. But the indigenous Berber word for Morocco is Ameruk. Okay. If you look, and people have probably seen that picture, there's a black Berber, I won't say black Berber, but there's a dark-skinned sister, a Berber sister who has a headdress on that's very much like the Statue of Liberty. And there's a reason that she has that headdress on. That headdress actually comes from the Caucasus Mountains. It was brought into North Africa from the million or so white slaves or Slavs that were brought into during the Barbary slave trade. Okay. And so the French remember, France has their foothold all over Africa, that part of Africa. They have the most entrenched colonial system, you get what I'm saying, of all of the other European colonial powers, but they were very, very deep into Algeria and Morocco. Those are all former French colonies. And who was the guy who designed the Statue of Liberty? He was a Frenchman. you know, and I'm pretty sure what he saw over there, you know, he basically
What
just
he saw
created
where?
something. Yeah, he just went to brought it over there into, you know, it's just weird. White
Okay,
folks
hold on,
is
hold
just
on, hold
weird.
on. You just said a lot, and I'm not understanding the endpoint. You said that there's a
Mhm.
reason why Morocco was the first one to acknowledge the
The
newly
United
formed
States.
United
It's
States.
because you were saying that the
What?
Moors, they had been coming back and forth. That's one of the pieces of evidence, is because the word the actual the
Okay, hold on.
names are almost yeah.
Stop. How does the Moors coming and trading with indigenous populations translates to centuries later the descendants of the British breaking away from Britain, becoming a new country, and being recognized by Morocco first? I'm just not understanding the exact
Well,
connection there.
right. So the people who, you got to think about it like just like basic human levels, right? When you talk about those ships that came over, the people who, okay, so like I don't get too far off into left field, but after the cataclysms, right? People talk about Atlantis. Not talking about that, but after these great cataclysms where civilization was restarted in the various parts of the Americas and Asia and Egypt and all of these places, the most important people were the people who still had the science of navigation on the water. So this is why Jesus is a fish, the Nomo with the Dogon, the gods were born in the cenotes of the Maya.
And
You
somehow
know,
this is going to relate to why
yeah,
Morocco was the first to
yeah,
recognize the United States. Okay, okay.
yeah.
Just making
So
sure.
yeah, for sure. So I was just saying that because you were talking about the ships that came over. The people who were coming over or who had knowledge, like you said, they backdoored us, it was the Moors. The Moors knew about it because they were from the culture that maintained the science of navigation. The so-called Islamic cultures, which are not white Arab
Okay, okay.
cultures, they are black.
Time. For the sake of my audience, if somebody asks, how does the country of Morocco recognizing the
So,
U.S. first? What's
uh-huh.
that? I mean, the answer has to be way more simpler than this.
Well, no, it is. It's because Morocco, the
A lot of
America was
people.
built.
Hold on,
Yeah.
A lot of people, you're losing them. You're talking about a whole bunch of historical stuff.
Yeah, I know. I already know. I already
If you
know.
notice, I give information in a way that's easy to
Sure.
digest. So again, what do
Morocco,
you think is the significance there?
the only people, when people talk about the Moors were over here or the Moors were Native Americans, it's a confused conversation. The Moors did come over here. They're not the indigenous people. The indigenous people are not Moors, but that's why Estavanico, the slave, was able to communicate with the people before they killed him. When they were trying to look for Cibola, when he was with the conquistadors, they used him as a translator because he was Moroccan.
But
And
what
the
does this
indigenous,
have to do with the country of Morocco recognizing the United
no,
States?
no, no. Like that. It goes down through the tunnel of time. Usually, you'll see the pattern continue through time. So the name America, even though we talk about the indigenous names that comes from, Ameruk was also the name of Morocco, the indigenous name of Morocco. When you talk about the
So wait,
cultures,
wait. So
Mhm.
so somehow you're saying Morocco recognized the United States because Morocco really named America?
No, it's because Morocco was already, they were the ones, it was the people in the Barbary Coast who were the ones who taught the white folks about America. They were the ones who were already coming over here, and they were the ones that were doing
Okay,
trade.
okay, time out,
Mhm.
real quick. Help me out, audience. Let me get some zeros in the chat. If you're not really understanding the answer when it comes to the alleged significance of Morocco recognizing the United States first and then bringing in the Statue of Liberty and all this stuff, put a 1 in the chat if you clearly understand what he's saying. Because in my research, the reason that Morocco recognized the United States first was because Morocco wanted global allies that were not participating in the colonization of Africa. And since the newly formed United States were not a European entity dividing up and pillaging North Africa, they sought an alliance with the newly formed United States. Not only that, but the Sultan wanted access to American trade routes in the Atlantic, such as our timber, our salted fish, naval supplies. The Moroccan ships needed safe passage in the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. I mean, that makes way more sense than somehow
No, it was
ancient
the
empire.
Europeans, Mike.
I'm speaking right now.
It was the Europeans that
And stay on mute and don't interrupt me when I'm speaking. You're interrupting me when I just gave a history of the connection that was way more simple and way more easy than you just gave for the last 15 minutes. So just don't interrupt me while I finally explain it to my audience in a simple, easy to digest format. Now, let me see what the audience is saying. I'm seeing a lot of zeros on TikTok. One person is giving a 1. Amor saying, yeah, they taught Christopher Columbus. Exactly. Someone saying the Statue of Liberty has been here. Amor says, I think he's saying Morocco taught Europe how to sail to the Americas. If that's what he's saying, that's something that could be said in one easy sentence. It doesn't take 16 bars. Let me see. Morocco, I'm seeing another person who says a 1. So we got a couple 1s. Okay, the person who just put a 1 says, I kind of get it, LOL. Okay, let me check on YouTube. The YouTube chat is not as active. Aquila I says he's making sense. Yeah, it's a bit too advanced. Okay. Yeah. Someone says, I think he's trying to say the Moors are Moroccan. Well, I mean, everybody knows that the Moors come from North Africa and, it's a Muslim influence, African influence. King Pattern says, I mildly lost this. It ain't adding up. Aquila says that makes sense. Mike, yeah, guys. In my research, the Moors wanted a trade partner that wasn't colonizing Africa. The Americas always has rich agricultural trade. So, it was a good alliance. But when people try to say that the Moors recognizing America as some kind of evidence to an ancient Moorish alliance or trade network, I don't really see that in my experience. Were the Moors over here? Were they trading? Yes, I just gave you guys actual quotes from Spanish conquistadors, from indigenous populations that said Black people from the Southeast from across the ocean came over. That's the connection. Not, in my opinion, this whole Morocco was the first one to recognize them. So and then the name comes from. I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Let me finish getting some feedback from the audience real quick. Then we're going to give them the floor to provide some closing remarks. And we've got like 2-3 people who've been waiting so patiently. That's also why I had to cut his wisdom a little bit. Amor says he was confusing. Okay, so I'm not the only one that's confused. Perfect. So brother, go ahead, unmute yourself, provide us with some closing remarks. If you want to clean up those statements or make them a little easier to digest, go for it. And then we got to get to the Rubber Band Man and then Tyrone.
Nothing happens in a vacuum. Somebody mentioned it. Yeah, it's probably just a little too advanced for most people, and not just the subject, but the way I lay it out, and that's cool. No big deal. It's all love. But when I was saying, I wasn't saying trying to make Morocco recognize being the first country to recognize the United States. I wasn't trying to make that the subject. I was just saying that there has been a history of the interaction between that area, their polity that we call Morocco, right, and the Americas. That's all I was saying. And you can go through different points in time down the timeline, and it just keeps popping up. That was just one example. The other one, when you mentioned one of the reasons Morocco, talking about the resources and that, but they weren't trying to protect their people because they controlled the Mediterranean. It was the Europeans who were trying to ally, or the United States that needed to ally with Morocco and try to. That's why Thomas Jefferson went over there, okay, because they needed protection in the Mediterranean from the Barbary polities. But the people, the Moroccans,
who needed protection from whom?
The European ships, the European and the American ships, okay, that were in the Mediterranean and right in the Atlantic off the coast of Africa, they were the ones that needed protection.
You're claiming that the United States had ships off the coast of Africa?
No, listen. No. It's trade. I'm not talking about the United States. I'm saying like it was trade. I'm talking about the European polities and the companies that were engaging in trade.
When you say European polities, are you talking about the United States or Europe?
White folks. It doesn't matter which one. The people.
Yes, it does. Let's stop with this poor scholarship. We can't just say white folks. We can't say it doesn't matter which one. You just made the asinine statement that the newly formed United States of America had ships off the coast of Africa that needed protection from Morocco. So I asked you, wait, is that what you're saying? Are you talking about America or are you talking about ships from Europe? Oh, I mean, just white people. Oh, that's why people are confused up here. I can't, guys, I'm sorry. My patience is running thin today. I let the brother rock out for like a good 30 minutes or so. We got people backstage. Before we went on this whole Moorish ramble, what I was clearly and easily showing you guys was how even emblems get racially reclassified over time. This right here is the original emblem of the Chickasaw tribe. And in more recent times, let's see, in more recent times, this is what the emblem of the Chickasaw tribe now looks like. we were talking about racial reclassification and paper genocide and stuff before we went on a whole Moorish side quest. Another example that I was going to show you guys was the country of Suriname. If you look at the country of Suriname, the original emblem of Suriname is as follows. And actually, I think I got an image right here. This right here is the original image of Suriname. You can clearly see that this is a melanated individual. Matter of fact, let me blow it up so you guys can see it even better than that. The original emblem of Suriname. Well, just like we see the emblem of the Chickasaw tribe changed over time, would you guys really be that surprised to find that they changed the emblem of Suriname from these black melanated figures to these white figures right here? So again, when we talk about reclassification, when we talk about, you know, even indigenous nations on their own emblems clearly showing melanated people, and then over time it gets whitewashed. I mean, we see that this is a tale as old as time, whether we're talking about the Chickasaw or whether we're talking about the country of Suriname. But again, guys, I got so many people backstage. I want to make sure that everybody has a chance to call in and speak their piece. The next person that we got is going to be, let me see, who is this? We're going to bring up the Rubber Band Man. Rubber Band Man, go ahead and unmute yourself. Let us know where you're calling in from and what's on your mind.
Hey, brother, how you doing tonight?
Doing well. How about yourself?
I'm calling in from Virginia, from Mississippi, and family from Mississippi and Alabama and New Orleans and stuff. So yeah, I had that. So you had that guy call in earlier. I was like, oh God, oh God. I'm coming more from the. I'm gonna stay in my lane.
Well,
I'm
hey,
coming more.
since you mentioned it, you know, I like constructive criticism and stuff. Were you following along with the last caller? Were you as confused as
Yes,
I
yeah.
was? Or
No. I was following from where he's from because I've studied that angle very well. I think sometimes I think sometimes when you're going in on information, you got to take into the consideration the audience. Everybody might not be on the same level. So, unlike the reason why I stopped on your show and I've been watching it off and on, you tend to take a lot of information that is very vast and you know how to break it down so your audience can digest it slowly and stuff like that so they could comprehend it. The brother was dropping some jewels, but he forgot he's also talking to an audience. You talk to an audience, you still have to break it down
yeah,
so that way
he's
people
talking like he's speaking to someone who already knows the wealth of knowledge
right
he has, and it's like, you
right
know, yeah,
yeah, and also too want to give a shout out to that brother. Your knowledge is deep. The only thing you got to work on is the concept of the presentation because everybody might not be ready to digest that info. But I'm gonna get to my point because I'm not gonna stay long. I'm gonna come more from the Masonic end of things. If you look at the uh, on the emblem that I have on my screen. I'm gonna come more from the Freemason side because I am a Freemason. And I've been a
well,
Freemason.
since you said you're a Freemason, what's your understanding of the creation of Freemasonry?
Um, I have well, I'll tell you what. Let me give you that aspect. I was doing some research, and I will get your email somewhere down the line, and I'll send you some information. Um, the Freemasonry goes back to ancient times, but I saw a passage from a book, and I think I saved it, and it came from Benjamin Franklin, and Franklin said that the American Freemasonry that they practiced, a vast majority of it came from the Americans. They got that from the indigenous people of the Americas. Now, I've been a Freemason since 1994. I started out Prince Hall, then I evolved, and then I branched off into four-letter Scottish Rite.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but all of these Freemasonic lodges and stuff, you guys actually take an oath, right?
Well, yes, yeah. You take an oath not to reveal the secrets, but the rule never says about teaching, because as a Mason, you are supposed to be a teacher at the same time. So right now I'm teaching. So there's certain things that I can't reveal because one because I am a scholar and I do study and stuff. I can tell you this as a scholar, corn comes through a lot of our stuff. Corn is in there. And as I start, once again, I've been one since 1994. I am a Knights Templar. I'm a 33rd degree and a Shriner. All right. Corn is
And
in
I
our
think you
stuff a
mentioned
lot.
Scottish Rite as well, right?
Yes, yes. A Scottish Rite. To become a Scottish Rite Mason, Scottish Rite, you must go up from on the side of the consistory up to 33. On the York Rite side, only takes you up to the Knights Templar. All right.
And can you
Plus on
tell
the
us
Shrine.
of any difference between the other rites and the Scottish Rite as far as
Uh,
origin?
um. Well, over the foundation of Freemasonry is the first 3 degrees. Whether it is on the Scottish Rite side, they call it the symbolic degrees, or the York Rite side, they call it the Blue House. All right, but corn pops up in those first 3 degrees. I could tell you that from a teacher.
No, no,
This
no.
is me teaching.
I wasn't asking about corn. I was saying, is there any difference in your understanding of the creation of the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry versus the other denominations, if you will, or do they have the same origin?
Well, they yes and no. Okay, I on the York Rite side mainly comes out of England. Okay, it mainly comes out of England, out of a place called Yorkshire. All right,
And we're talking
I
about
just
the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry.
right. The Scottish Rite Freemasonry is a combination of that mainly comes out of France. Now, it was called Scottish Rite because of some Scottish guy that went and freaking lived in France and blase blase, and he met with some guys and they. But originally was called Ancient Accepted Rite. Okay, so it really comes out of France. The consistory Scottish Rite comes out of France. All right, on the York Rite side comes out of England. All right, but if you go to the history of it, but the Benjamin Franklin, I'm talking about American Masonry. I and I gotta find that because I had it, I saw it, and I
Okay, hold
screenshotted
on.
it.
I have to pause you. I have to pause you. Just so we're clear on something. So when I ask you what the origin of Scottish Rite Masonry is, you're claiming even though it's called Scottish Rite, it didn't really originate in Scotland or with the Scottish. It's just it's French, but a dude who's Scottish went to France and started it, or what exactly are you saying?
You had a Scottish guy that went to France and and he hung out with some French Masons, and they came up with this rite going from 1 to 33.
So you're claiming that the Scottish Rite originated in France?
France, yeah, yeah, I got
Yeah.
books on that too. Yeah,
Yeah, well, I would love to hear the books because the information that I've garnered, since most of my family are travelers as well, if you will, they actually got this information from the indigenous tribes of the Southeast before we ever even hear of a Freemasonry mystery lodge or school being created. And don't unmute yourself. I'll let you know when it's time to unmute yourself. Before we ever even hear of a European mystery school or Masonic lodge, my tribe, the Muskogee Creek Nation, our people in the Southeast actually had something called the Great Medicine Society. The Choctaw as well had mystery societies. We were known as builders. All of our mounds and truncated pyramids in the Southeast aligned to certain degrees and things of that nature. And Scottish Highlanders had been coming into the Southeast since the 1500s, intermixing with the tribes for favorable trade conditions and land, and creating half-breed children that would later be used as agent provocateurs. So it's interesting that you're claiming the Scottish Rite of Freemasonry came from France, but you're not mentioning the Scottish factions that came into the Southeast where they extracted this knowledge from as early as the 1500s, late 1400s. But maybe that's because you took an oath and you can only reveal certain things to the public and certain things you can't. I don't really know. I didn't take the same oath as you, although most of my family members have. But go ahead. What's on your mind?
Brother, first, I came here humbly. I'm not trying to be uh, disrespectful to you. I just appreciate you saying the core back. I
Did I
didn't get a
say
chance
that
to
you were
finish
being
my.
disrespectful?
Yeah, but you came off that, brother. I didn't get a chance to finish my
No,
thought.
no. Did I say you were being disrespectful to me?
But yeah, but I'm Choctaw too, to Choctaw 2 descent. I'm
If
also
you're Choctaw too, then why didn't you talk about the Scottish Highlanders coming to the Southeast and stealing our indigenous spiritual systems? Is it because you took an oath with these same Scottish fraternities, or I don't know. I don't know. Hold on. Let me just see what the audience is talking about. I don't think I said anything that disrespected you. You didn't do anything to disrespect me. I just wanted to speak truth to power. If there's a long-standing history of Scottish and the Scot Irish coming to the Southeast, stealing our indigenous systems, grafting their bloodlines onto ours, then why not speak to that? Unless you're part of that same secret society fraternal order and took certain oaths. I mean, either you don't know that origin story or you know it and you're not telling it. And if you know it and you're not telling it, then you just purposely misled my audience, making them think that Scottish Rite Freemasonry comes from the French. Damn. But real quick, you're going to be able to speak uninterrupted. We'll put a timer on and everything. I just got to see what my audience is talking about, because this is for the audience at the end of the day. Kyle said he's nervous. That's why he took it personal. Some of y'all are laughing up. Y'all cracking up. Y'all said he with them. The Phoenix says I'm super lost. Run up them views and likes says because he's a Freemason. A lot of people are saying yes, yes. Run up says Masons are only good to Masons. Oh, hey, well, that's a personal opinion. But yeah, go ahead. What's on your mind? Do you either A, not know about that origin story that I just spoke to, or B, do you know of it and you're just not permitted by the people higher up than you to reveal that to the general public?
once again, brother, there's no one that tells me what I can and cannot reveal. I don't. You trying to put words in my mouth. All I'm saying is I agree with.
No, I'm not putting words in my mouth. Your order literally had you take an oath of death, that you can only reveal certain things. You even came up here and admitted it. You said that you're able to teach and talk about certain history and stuff, but I mean, everybody who knows even an inkling about the Freemasons know that it's a secret society. So yes, there's many of things that you're not permitted to say, and you took a death oath on that same thing. I mean, guys, I'm confused. I'm confused now. He's acting like he did it, blindfold himself and kneel down and take an oath. Like, what's happening? I'm confused, guys. I'm confused. This broadcast wasn't even supposed to be this long. We're going to do something special here. I do this once in a blue moon. Guys, go ahead and vote 0 in the chat if you just want to get on to Tyrone. Put a 1 in the chat if you want me to put up a timer. Let him speak 2 minutes uninterrupted. See if we can flesh this out a little bit more. While we wait to see if anybody wants a timer, let's at least get Tyrone up here since he's been waiting oh so patiently backstage. Tyrone, let the people know where you calling in from and what's on your mind. We went from the Moorish to the Freemasonry. The whole time we have here genealogy.
What's going on, Mike? This is Tyron Leon from Charlotte, North Carolina.
Oh, and our resident Mason fled the stage, so never mind. We don't have to vote on the timer. Go ahead, Tyrone. What's on your mind? I mean, we've had some interesting, detracting conversations, to say the least.
Yeah. What was that dissertation that brother brought up? That the Mexican government or whoever refused to send him.
To send who?
He was talking about a paper that they took down the Olmec head illustration or something like that because of a paper. What was that paper?
I'm not sure which paper he was referring to. I mean, I've heard so much pseudo shit in the last 20 minutes. I'm not exactly sure what to talk about.
Wars and stuff like that. I left out to go grocery shopping.
Yeah.
Yeah. He mentioned something interesting that we should look up. If he is another a guest from another time, could you make him write it in the chat so we can?
I mean, he's gone. He's not here. Let's just move on with the conversation.
Anyway,
what do you think about the last caller? Were you following along with that at all? Do you believe that the Scottish Rite Freemasonry has its origins in France, or do you understand that even though it was spearheaded in France, most of the knowledge came from the Scottish Irish homesteads that were all along the Southeast, such as French-owned Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, South Carolina, Florida?
From what I know about the Scottish Rite, it started with Albert Pike. That was like one of the heads of the Triple K, if I'm not mistaken. And many of those people were rocking with the $5 Indians and setting up those reservations to sit up here and like rename tribes from their actual indigenous tongues, like the Kituwa, the Anayawiya, Muskegon into Creek. Cherokee get the Seminole, who are also Muskegon. They were actually Maroon communities that were branched off and had a division between the Muskegon. Then you had the Chickasaw and the Chata, which they got renamed Choctaw and Chickasaw, and you got Seminole. So this is where you got the creation of these federally recognized tribes through the Scottish Rite Freemasons. And I know one of my friends, Safa Carew, knows more extensively about it because his own ancestors was in like the Scottish Rite Masonry.
Yeah. And that's why I was holding his feet to the flames to speak truth to power. Did the Scottish Rite Freemasonry have French influence? Absolutely. But they got that information from the French American colonies in the Southeast, and they literally stole all of our shit from our mystery schools. And those same Scottish sect of Freemasons are spearheading the Dawes Roll. The same ones who are Georgia governors. The same ones who have baby with Creek Indian women and have William McIntosh sign away the tribe's land. They're part, and he took an oath to that same faction. So I'm not surprised that he didn't really want to truly speak to truth to power. I mean, I don't get it. He started off leading with, yeah, they got a lot of the influence from America, indigenous to America. But when I really wanted to speak about how the Scottish Rite and the Scott Irish stole our shit, I don't know. Maybe it's because he rose through that degree. And I don't get it.
If I'm not mistaken, we didn't even get into like the freeloaders video I sent you in the back chat last time I was up here, but it was it's totally relevant to the conversation too. But to answer the prompt, are Africans and Latinos identity confused? Yes, they are. Like many of these people don't even have a decent formal education when it comes to real United States history when it pertains to our history, because most of our history is entangled within southeastern woodlands and northeastern woodland tribes. So you can't have one without the other. And like the dude that called in earlier that was from Louisiana, I don't know what the heck he's talking about because they're ingrained in American Indian culture. They're Chitimacha, they're Chata. They got some Apache in there. They got all types of indigenous tribes within their own songs, like Marikude Fayo. You got Iko Iko, like the other caller was talking about, and plenty other songs of that nature that hit the top of the Billboard charts with the Nevilles and the Wild Magnolias and all types of groups like that out there in Louisiana, New Orleans, Mardi Gras Indians. And it's shared amongst like the Muskegon, what they would call Afro-Bahamian, Low Country Gullah, all types of peoples from that area. They share similar retentions that are Muskegon dialects or Chata or Chickasaw dialects, because these are Maroon communities. And
it's funny that you mentioned Albert Pike, because Albert Pike actually personally interacted with Southeastern tribes. So it's interesting how all these Scottish Rite Masons have such interactions with Southeastern tribes who already have mystery schools and are already Master Masons for eons, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
and shout out to Amor. Amor says, yeah, the last two guys were a little off on the information. Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's odd because we're up here speaking about our indigenous American heritage. We're talking about history, receipts, facts, and then we have people that want to take us all the way over here with some Moorish talk, with some Freemasonry talk. I mean, was anybody up here talking about Freemasons?
No.
He literally came up here talking about, I want to start taking it from the Freemasonic angle, and I'm a Mason. Can you read the room? That's not the topic we're discussing. So don't be surprised when you say some pseudo shit, I correct you, then you don't want to speak about the true history of the influence of the Southeastern tribes on Scottish Rite Masonry, and then you get insecure and run away. I mean, whatever.
Yeah, and these Mason types, it's kind of like the Tammany Hall and Odd Fellows up in the north, where they were trying to like godfather in the Lenape, Delaware ethnic groups up there. If you read the book Tigers of Tammany, it breaks down that. And also Fraternal Order of the Red Men, the Boy Scouts and all that. Those are also tied into YTs playing Indian and trying to confiscate Indian identity from the natural people.
It gets deep. It gets deep. Somebody says, "How do I call?" And Tyrone, I got a bad echo. I'm not sure if you can fix that at all. WR says, "How do I join the call on YouTube?" There's a StreamYard link in the chat. All you got to do is click the StreamYard link. Here, I'll post it again. But yeah, this is so strange how, like, for one, if you want to just completely talk about some shit that's not relevant to the discussion at all, that's cool. At least make it easy to follow along. For two, if I'm gonna actually take what you're talking about and relate it to the topic at hand and how the shit was really stolen from our indigenous tribes of the Southeast, why are you trying to negate that? Why are you trying to hide the history? I don't get it. I don't get it. But yeah, Tyrone, what's on your mind? And I think we're gonna have RS or RW call in at some point.
What I have in mind, I would like for you to review this freeloaders video though, because it was relevant towards last night's program with the Lumbees and all that, and it's also relevant to this Donald Trump stuff too, and how like they're saying that Native Americans are overly reliant on government handouts and it makes them lazy, whereas the Lumbees say that they're self-reliant, self-sufficient, and do for self. Kind of like how Pan-Africanists and pro-black quacks say that, oh, we got to do for self and all this other stuff, and we don't need no handout, right? The same Booker T. Washington, Marcus Garvey, type of talking point, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, hey, if you email me the video, maybe I'll watch it and incorporate it into some of my content, but I've already been broadcasting for over 2 hours. I'm getting ready to wrap up this broadcast here.
It's in the chat right here.
Okay. Perfect. And RW or RS, who was it? Whoever that was asking for the link, I put it in the chat. You got a couple minutes to call in before we wrap up the broadcast. WR Sanders. But yeah, Tyrone, leave us with some closing remarks real quick.
Well, I'd say this. People, y'all need to stay on your square and keep doing that genealogy. Find out who your people were. Like, it's not hard and it's not expensive to go to your registry of vital statistics. Take a trip to the National History and Archives Center or the Library of Congress and give them your surnames, and they'll help guide you to where your ancestors were. Or you could book a consultation with Mike TV and he'll help you find what you're looking for, whether it's alleged African or if you really are American Indian.
Hey, well, I appreciate the shout out, brother. Thanks for calling in. At least you made the most sense out of the last two people. I mean, Jesus. Talk to you later, Tyrone. You take it easy. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I don't see anybody else backstage. Oh, wait. RW came in with a buzzer beater. RW, go ahead and unmute yourself. Let us know where you're calling in from and what's on your mind. You're still on mute, RW. There's a little microphone icon that has a slash through it. You got to click it. There you go. Where are you calling in from and what's on your mind?
What's going on, Mike? I'm calling in from Indianapolis, Indiana. Just been watching you, man, from a far distance. Just checking in on you, seeing how you how you do your research. Because basically, right now I'm in a situation where I want to be like the historian of the family. Basically, get my people actually involved in finding out their lineage and stuff like that. And I just want to appreciate you and just want to thank you, man. Just want to shout out you, man. I'll be doing a consultation with you soon. I got some stuff got to take care of first, but just want to give you a shout out, brother.
Yeah, well, I appreciate it, brother. And I look forward to connecting with you one-on-one. Make sure when you book that consultation on the checkout page, you use the coupon code TikTok, one word, all lowercase, and that'll hook you up with a 20% discount.
I appreciate it, man. But other than that, man, keep doing your thing, man.
Well, hey, how long were you watching? Did you see the Freemason dude? Did you see the Moorish dude?
Yeah, man. Like, I got a history of family members that are Freemasons, man.
Yeah.
My granddad, he just passed away. I kind of just, figure out kind of like 2 or 3 years ago that he was a part of that. And I'm, do all my research on like, a lot of these things that's going on in the world and how like, everything is kind of like spiritual. So it's like it's a lot of information, but when you tie everything together, it's a reason why they doing all this all this stuff. Reason why they're trying to divide us. The reason why they're trying to confuse us. It's everything's tied all together. When I was a kid, probably like when I was 16 to probably 18 years old, it was time where I was stuck in that Illuminati mode. Like I know Illuminati is like it's something big, and all this religion, all this stuff.
Hey,
all
brother.
tied.
The last caller the caller before last wasn't stuck in an Illuminati mode. He literally took a death oath to a secret European society that stole our indigenous knowledge. Bro, like he's a whole different time. I mean, it's crazy. It's crazy. Did Scottish Rite get spearheaded by the French? Yes, in 1725. Guess what? The French had been colonizing the Southeast since 1682.
Right. So
1682. Come on.
It's incredible.
Damn near 40 years. They come to the Southeast, steal our mystery systems, steal our info, then 40 years later come out with Scottish Rite Freemasonry.
Yeah, it's definitely
and see how I'm not a Freemason, but I can break that down to you easy, simply. You guys understand it. Oh, the French colonized us in the Louisiana area 1682.
Right.
They start their sect, the Scottish Rite Freemasonry, 1725. Oh, connect the dots. But oh boy, coming up here on some old, Freemasonry comes from Indigenous Americans. But then when he brings up the Scottish Rite, and I ask about that, he's like, oh no, it comes from France. And I'm like, no, like it was stolen by the indigenous people. Well, Mike, I didn't disrespect you. Did I say you disrespected me? What?
They get scared, man. Once you know how to approach them with the right information, that's what it is. It's how you approach them. It's simple. Some people ain't never been attacked before, so they don't know how to handle that type of situation. So, like I said, I just want to thank you, man. I got my mom watching too as well. I'm trying to get everybody involved in this.
Shout out to mama.
Yeah, shout out to moms. She probably watching right now, but like I said, I appreciate you, man. I'll be reaching out to you soon. Like I said, I watched you yesterday too. I was watching when the African dude came on, and then
the Nigerian from Louisiana,
right? It was. I'm just in here laughing. I remember when you said he was like something like, who the fuck this motherfucker think I am? Like, you was I know you. I felt the spirit, man. I felt you. You was real serious about that when he said that to you, you disrespecting our motherfucking culture, our history. You want to come in and tell us about what we got going on? Come on, man. Don't do that. Yeah, sometimes my message to people that's around my age. I'm 30 years old. We around the same age, but
I'm 31.
So when I tell my people, I'm like, hey, man, y'all gotta stop letting people just run y'all over. Stop letting people. We're not like we was back in the day. We're not gonna take that certain type of behavior from these people. So let's work together. Let's know our history, and let's make it work, man. Let's gain our land back. Let's gain our momentum back, because we've been down for so long. It's time for us to rise back up and stick together. So
yeah,
I appreciate you, man.
Yeah, and I appreciate you as well, brother. Look forward to connecting with you on the genealogy tip. Thanks for calling in and not taking us on a Moorish Freemasonic tangent.
They delusional, man. I think that's all delusion. At some point, even with what other stuff that's going on right now, delusion. So they just gonna have to get rid of it, with it spiritually. But have a good night, man. Be safe.
All right, you too, brother. Peace.
Yep.
Yeah, guys, if anybody's talking some Moorish shit and they're not starting it and ending it with Moors had a trade network with us, then sold us out after 1492 when they started getting pressure from the Spanish. If they don't start with that and end with that, they leading you on some pseudo shit. If anybody's going to bring up Freemasonry and not start and end with how they stole our mystery systems from the Southeast and how our ancestors were the true master masons until European colonialists came and stole the esoteric knowledge and repackaged it and rebranded it and started their own little fraternities based off it. If anybody's not starting and ending with that, they're leading you on a pseudo tangent. That's it. That's all. Let's talk about it. But ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, that's all I have for you this evening. As always, make sure to check out the website, nativeblackancestry.com. I have tons of genealogical resources available for you. And for anybody who's looking to get personalized guidance, you already know what to do. Book a consultation.
Hi, my name is Frances Tuck, and I contacted Mike from Mike TV on YouTube because I wanted to find out about my family's Native American history that I believed existed. Through the research that I was able to do through Mike TV, I was able to find out that our name is indeed on the registry. I had a consultation with Mike today, and because of his advice and the research that he has done, I am now confident that I'm able to find my family's roots in the Native American History database. Thank you, Mike.
They don't want you to remember this. You not no slave, you indigenous. Fuck how they painted them Indians. You went to war with the French and the British, man. Quite frankly, you was kings, Merovingians. They took the women and men, made them prisoners, raised up the children to worship their images, set up a lab to the genes and they mixed them. And this shit get way deeper than your pigment.